Chapter 308. Remembered by the county magistrate. Mao pursed his lips and looked at her hesitantly. After a while, he said, I saw Bian Yuan is having a hard time. Gu Yundong took a sip of water. Tell me. I'm mentally prepared. She knew very well what the Gu family was like. Mao told her everything about Bian Yuanji whom he had met when he entered the village and what the two of them had said. He told her about the kid's fear and his jobs in the Gu family. Gu Yundong was not the only one who was livid. Shu, Go, and Zhu were equally indignant. Although they had lived a hard life and were used to seeing the fickleness of human nature, that was because they had no relatives or friends. When their parents and grandparents were still alive, even if they did not treat them well, they would not be so mean. Moreover, they still had brothers to take care of each other now. Gu Yundong exhaled softly and tightened her grip on the cup. Zhu stood up. Why don't we just sneak into Gu village and steal him? That's right. The Gu family doesn't care about him anyway. That kid's been through a lot there. These people are no good. Only Mao sat there and didn't speak. Xiao Qingyun glanced at him and asked, why did the Gu family take him in back then? As soon as he said this, everyone was stunned. That's right. Since the Gu family disliked this child so much, why did they accept him after Ding Jincheng gave him to them? Bian Mulan was entrusted to the Ding family. Mao then said, the Gu family really didn't want to take him in. At that time, it was Ding Jincheng's parents who abandoned the child at the entrance of the Gu family. Old Gu didn't even look at him. It was so cold at that time. Bian Yuanji froze at the door for the entire night. Someone in the Gu village couldn't stand it anymore and brought him home to drink hot water. However, it was impossible for them to take in the child. At that time, it was difficult for anyone. Fortunately, the newly appointed county magistrate of Jiangyu County happened to travel incognito and went to various villages to learn about the people's livelihood. The county magistrate bumped into Bian Yuanji, whose face had turned red from the cold. He thought that Gu village was too difficult, so he asked a few more questions and finally understood the situation. The county magistrate got angry at that moment. Many people died in Yongning Prefecture because of the famine. This was really a time to develop manpower. The new emperor encouraged widows to remarry and have more children. It was not easy for Gu village to have a child who survived the disaster. He had blood family and was close to his maternal grandfather's family, but they refused to take him in and watched him freeze to death. He called the Gu family and the Ding family over. After repeated questioning and weighing, he finally asked the Gu family to take in this child. Therefore, Bian Yuanji was remembered by the county magistrate. If he suddenly disappeared, both the Gu family and the other people in the Gu village would be worried about being punished by the county magistrate. Who knew how big the matter would be? Moreover, Bian Yuanzi's household registration had already fallen into the Gu family. If he was taken away just like that, he would become an unregistered person and it would be very troublesome in the future. If they wanted to bring him out, they had to start from other sources. When Shu and the others heard this, they were a little dejected. Was it so difficult? Why don't we give some money to those people from the Gu family? Mao slapped him. What bad idea did you come up with? It's obvious that that family is greedy. They might not even give him to you even if you offer the money. Then what do we do? Xiao Qingyuan looked at Gu Yundong, who had been silent. Do you have an idea? Chapter 309. Just get him back righteously. Gu Yundong was indeed thinking. We can't steal him. We can't use money. Then we might as well get him back fair and square. Mao and the other three's eyes lit up. How? Get someone to ask the Gu family for him. Who? Gu Yundong smiled. Ding Jincheng. The few of them looked at each other, and their eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, the Ding family didn't want the child back then. What if the Ding family took the child back? The Gu family was afraid that the county magistrate would punish them, but the child would be raised by the Ding family. When the county magistrate remembered and asked them, they would be able to explain. It's just that Ding Jincheng might not agree, right? Xiao Qingyuan clenched his fists. Just beat him up. Mao and the other three shuddered in unison. When they thought of how Xiao Qingyuan had interrogated them back then, they immediately felt that this was nothing. Ding Jincheng would definitely agree. It's late today. Well, look for him at the Ding residence tomorrow. Gu Yundong stood up. All right, rest. The four of them left the room one after another and returned to their rooms. Gu Yundong saw that Madame Yang had finished piecing together the puzzle and was just sitting there alone, thinking about something. She immediately walked over and asked softly, "Mother, what's wrong?" I'm a little familiar with this name. However, she couldn't remember him even after thinking for a long time. Gu Yundong smiled and put the things away for her before leading her away. As they walked, she asked, "Mother, do you still remember eldest aunt?" Phone. Older Aunt Gus's original name was Gu Dafeng, very similar to Gu Dajiang and Gu Da's names. It could be seen how randomly old Gu gave them names back then. Yes, Yuan is the youngest son of eldest aunt. Madame Yang's eyes widened. I remember. Actually, she had also heard Yuan Ji's space name yesterday, but her attention had been on Gu Dajiang and she hadn't thought about it carefully. Gu Yundong brought her back to her room, but she could not fall asleep on the bed. In the middle of the night, she suddenly heard a soft knock on the door. She looked at Madame Yang and sat up. When she opened the door, she saw Xiao Qingyuan standing outside. I'll go to Gu village tomorrow morning, Xiao Qingyuan said. Gu Yundong looked down and suddenly smiled. You've thought of that too? Okay. Xiao Qingyuan's heart suddenly raced when he saw her like this. How could he be so smart? He already knew what he was going to do before she even said anything. Was this feeling like what others said, that their hearts were connected? Actually, ever since the two of them met again in Yongning Prefecture, even though they didn't say anything in detail, their way of interacting had changed slightly. Xiao Qingyuan could feel the change in her attitude, and this change made his eyes burn more and more. Do you have any money on you? Gu Yundong asked, as if she was about to give him banknotes. If that woman is not easy to deal with, then forget it. I don't care about her. I know. I have enough money. Don't worry. He would take care of it. After all, not only did he have to ask old Gu for Bian Yuanji, but he also had to teach Gu Gang a lesson. After saying that, the two of them went to sleep respectively. The next morning, Xiao Qingyuan left the inn. When Kat and the others arrived, only Gu Yundong was accompanying Madame Yang for breakfast. The four of them quickly finished their porridge and said to Gu Yundong, "Miss, the four of us will accompany you." No need. Gu Yundong peeled an orange for Madame Yang, wiped her hands and said, "Dog, pig, Tigyi accompany me. You two went to the Gu village yesterday. Rest in the inn today and help me take care of my mother." The four of them immediately agreed. Gu Yundong packed her things and left the inn. However, she did not expect to see Ding Jincheng not long after she left the house. Chapter 310:1 Won't break your leg, alright. There was no need to go to his village to look for him now. Gu Yundong led Go and Ding Jincheng towards Ding Jincheng. Ding Jincheng had listened to Madame Hu and came to apologize to Miss Jiang. For this, he had brought an extra 100 copper coins. When he passed by the pastry shop, he would buy her some sweets. Madame Hu originally wanted to follow them, but unfortunately, she had a stomachache when she woke up in the morning and didn't even leave the house. However, at this moment, Ding Jincheng was a little hesitant. Miss Jiang was indeed not bad. She was good-looking and from the county city. Although her family was not very rich, she was still much better than the woman Aunt Chow had set him up with. However, he still missed Bien Mulan. After all, they had been husband and wife for 4 years, and Mulan was an understanding, gentle, and virtuous person. Although she had never given birth to a child for him, she was really good to him. When he saw Miss Jiang, he couldn't help but compare the two of them. After comparing them, he felt that this Miss Jiang was from the county after all. She gave off a superior feeling, making him feel uncomfortable. Therefore, although Ding Jincheng had arrived at the county city, he had been loitering on the street not far from the Jiang family's entrance for a long time. When Gu Yundong stood in front of him, he suddenly came back to his senses. He didn't know if it was because of guilt or something else, but he turned around and left. However, he had only taken 2 steps when he was forced back by Go. Ding Jincheng took a few steps back and stood in front of Gu Yundong. He was clearly a head taller than her, but his shoulders were hunched as if he had been abused. One don't want to remarry. I just came here for a walk. His explanation was a little revealing. Gu Yundong frowned. Who cares if you remarry or not? If anyone had to care, it would be her uncle and aunt. She looked at Ding Juncheng and said impatiently, I have something to discuss with you. What? Ding Juncheng was stunned. Gu Yundong said, go to old Gus' house and bring Yuanji out. Bring Bien Yuanji out? Ding Juncheng said awkwardly, I'm afraid that won't do. He's the Gu family's grandson to begin with, so he should be raised by the Gu family. I'm not related to him now, so it won't be right for me to ask for him. Gu Yundong sneered. The Gu family is raising him? Don't tell me you don't know what kind of life he's living in the Gu family? Ding Juncheng lowered his head. But that's also the Gu family's fault. Gu Yundong gave him a hard kick. Are you going or not? If not, you'll break your legs. Was he a man? Why did her cousin marry such a person in the first place? Zhu snorted at the side. Hey, why are you so stupid? She's only asking you to bring him out and move his household register out. She didn't ask you to raise him. Ding Juncheng suddenly realized that she would definitely raise Bien Yuanji herself. Judging from Gu Yundong's current state, she probably did not want to return to the Gu family or have anything to do with them. Moreover, that man was dressed so elegantly that day. With such a rich man, it would definitely not be difficult for her to raise Bien Yuanji. Except, what if the Gu family found out that he had lied to them and came back to settle scores with him? Gu Yundong said, Ding Juncheng, you promised my cousin to take good care of Yuanji. Not only did you fail, you even pushed him into the fire pit. Aren't you afraid that my cousin will come to settle scores with you in the middle of the night? Ding Juncheng shuddered. I'll go. That's more like it. Let's go. Gu Yundong turned around and left. Ding Juncheng hurriedly followed after her. As soon as the two of them left, a figure happened to turn around not far away. She narrowed her eyes as she watched Ding Juncheng walk further and further away. Chapter 311. Having a lover. Gu Yundong walked so fast that Ding Juncheng had to take large strides to catch up with her. Are we going now? How long do you want to wait? It's still early. I have a carriage over there. It will take less than an hour to get to Gu village. It's not even lunchtime yet. But I'm not ready yet. Gu Yundong suddenly stopped and turned to look at him. What else do you need to prepare? By the time you're done, Yuanji will be half dead. Ding Juncheng immediately didn't dare to make a sound. B0x. Calm. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. Don't tell me you're trying to stall for time and take the opportunity to escape. No. You know where my home is. I can't escape. I'm glad you know. Gu Yundong continued to walk forward. When she reached the carriage, she immediately chased him up. Ding Juncheng had never sat in such a good carriage before. For some reason, he was actually a little happy. He did not dare to move and sat down obediently. However, he was a little puzzled. This girl from the Gu family seemed to be different from before. But it made sense. After marrying a rich man, she would have confidence and there would be someone to back her up. Dog drove the carriage. However, just as they left the city gate, an ox cart brushed past them and entered the county. The person who came was Madame Hu. She was still worried that her son would say something he shouldn't and anger the girl away. Hence, as soon as she felt slightly better, she immediately got on the ox cart of her fellow villagers and rushed over. Madame Hu alighted from the ox cart and went straight to the Jiang family. Unexpectedly, as soon as she reached the entrance of the Jiang family, she bumped into Miss Jiang, and there was no sign of her son beside her. Madame Hu thought to herself, oh no, did he mess it up? Just as she was thinking about it, Miss Jiang also saw her. Madame Hu quickly squeezed out a smile and went up to her. Miss Jiang, what a coincidence. Did you see our Jinqing? He said that he wanted to apologize to you early in the morning. He even said that he wanted to queue up to buy pastries for you. Before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by Miss Jiang. Andy, don't joke around. No wonder he doesn't like anyone. He already has a lover. The girl is young and beautiful. Your Ding Juncheng is quite lucky. After saying that, she snorted and turned to enter the door, closing it with a bang. Madame Hu wanted to step forward, but she was almost hit in the nose and could only take 2 steps back. Juncheng had a lover? Who was it? Why didn't this kid tell her earlier that he had a lover? She was young and beautiful. What? How could his mother not let him marry her? Madame Hu muttered in frustration. No, she had to go back. When that kid returned, she would ask him what was going on. Madame Hu walked back to Shangbei village in the ox cart. When they were about to reach Gu village, they saw a carriage parked there from afar. She did not dare to look too long. Those who had carriages were all rich people. Who knew what kind of person with a temper was sitting inside? Madame Hu got off the ox cart. Unexpectedly, as soon as she entered Shangbei village, she saw a person from the same village say, "Auntie, why did your Jin Qing go to Gu village? What's so strange about going to Gu village?" Madame Hu didn't mind. "My Jin Qing is kind-hearted. He goes to visit Mulan's younger brother from time to time. He'll be back soon." Madame Hu was right about this. Ding Jincheng would go to the Gu village once a month. It was unknown if it was because of his conscience or for his reputation, but every time he went to Madame Hu, he was not allowed to carry gifts. Chapter 312. Ill raise him because of this. Every time Ding Jincheng visited him, Yuan Ji would not eat that night. Madame Zhao said that Ding Jincheng had brought him food, so he must have hidden it, although she never found anything. However, this made them even angrier. Sometimes, they didn't even give him breakfast the next day. Madame Hu felt that it was fine if Jin Qing just went to see the child. This time, she didn't think much of it either, but as soon as she entered the house, what Miss Jiang had said suddenly flashed through her mind. She was young and beautiful, but Jin Qing didn't tell his mother about her. B0X. Como no, wasn't there one in Gu village? That was Gu Gang's new concubine. Madame Hu scolded the vixen fiercely. No wonder Jin Qing always ran to the Gu village. Did he hook up with a married woman? Damn it, why did he fall for that woman? Madame Hu couldn't stay any longer. No, she had to quickly bring Ding Jincheng back. He couldn't be ruined by that woman. Thinking of this, she got up and left quickly. At this moment, Ding Jincheng had already arrived at the entrance of Old Gus' house. Bian Yuanji was the first to see him, and his face instantly turned pale. He knew that he would not have dinner every time his ex-brother-in-law came. He had clearly told this guy several times not to come again. This guy had also agreed last time. Why did he still come? Bian Yuanji was in despair as he heard his second aunt's mocking voice. "Hey, isn't this Yuanzi's brother-in-law? What's wrong? You're here to see Yuanji again? Since you care so much about Yuanji, why don't you take him away and raise him yourself?" Ding Jincheng swallowed his saliva. He had put down the carriage a kilometer away from the Gu village and came alone. Gu Yundong and the rest were still in the carriage. Hearing Gu Da's wife's mocking voice, he immediately agreed with her. "Alright, they'll take him away. Our family will raise him in the future." Madame Jia was stunned. The other Gu family members who came out were also stunned. "Are you serious?" Ding Jincheng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. "Of course it's true. Look at how badly you've tortured him. I really can't stand it anymore. They'll take him away today. From now on, he's a member of my Ding family. I promised his sister to take good care of him." Bian Yuanji was a bit surprised when he heard that, but now he became numb. Actually, there was no difference whether it was in the Gu family or the Ding family. He stood silently in the corner, as if everything had nothing to do with him. However, Ding Jincheng looked at him. "Yuanji, are you willing to come with me?" He thought that Bian Yuanji was willing to do so. After all, he often came to visit him and old Gu would beat and scold him. At least he would comfort and encourage him. He might be the only person who treated this kid well. Bian Yuanji raised his head and glanced at him indifferently. This was his brother-in-law. When his sister was still alive, he had treated him quite well. It was not until they were separated from their parents when they fled that the Ding family despised the siblings for being a burden. He had heard Madame Hu say with his own ears that his sister was a hen who couldn't lay eggs. It was fine if she couldn't carry the Ding family's children, but she even had to bring a burden. At that time, his brother-in-law did not dare to say anything. He just sat at the side with his head lowered, as if he was afraid that this scolding would affect him. Bian Yuanji felt that this was not the behavior of a husband. He defended his sister, but his sister wouldn't let him stand up for her. She said that it was just a few words of scolding, and she wouldn't lose anything. Now, this person who could not make the decision at home said that he wanted to raise him. Chapter 3:13, Gu Gang is here. Bian Yuanji lowered his head again. He always felt that it was impossible. Ding Jincheng was stunned when he saw that he did not agree immediately. On the other hand, the people from the Gu family became smug. Madame Zhao snorted coldly. Ding Jincheng, what are you thinking? Back then, it was your family who didn't want him and left him at our door. Now, you want to go back? Dream on. Who do you think you are? Do you think you can take or abandon him as you wish? Ding Jincheng instantly panicked. He thought that things would go smoothly. After all, the Gu family did not like Yuanji. B0x. Calm, you don't even treat him as your biological grandson. Since you don't like him, why are you still raising him? Wouldn't it be a good opportunity for me to take him away? Who doesn't treat him as a biological grandson? Gu Chuanzong suddenly scolded. Don't spout **T everywhere and ruin our Gu family's reputation. I, Gu Chuanzong, can raise my own grandson. I don't need an outsider like you. Ding Jincheng wanted to grab the dirt on the ground and throw it at his face. The most shameless person was this old man. That's right. Gu Dai leaned against the side and said lazily, Hey, you have to be careful with your words. Yuanji is doted on by us uncles, aunts, cousins and is very happy. Why are you saying that we don't have any feelings? You don't have it in the first place. Ding Jincheng was furious. This was a well-known fact, yet they were still lying through their teeth. At this moment, the people from Gu village heard the commotion and came over to watch it. When they heard that Ding Jincheng wanted Bian Yuanji back, they were surprised that the Gu family didn't agree. The patriarch, Gu Gang, also came over, accompanied by a young and weak woman. He was the patriarch, so he naturally stood in the middle as soon as he came over. He frowned and looked at the two of them. What's going on? You're all living too well. Are you starting to look for trouble? How can that be? Patriarch, it's all because this Ding Jincheng went crazy and suddenly came to our place to take Yuanji away. Madame Zhao reported him first. Before Gu Gang could speak, his concubine, Madame Shen, covered her mouth and laughed. Why should he take her away? She's a child of the Gu family. How can we let an outsider take her away? Madame Zhao pursed her lips. She did not like this vixen. At such a young age, she was so indecent and followed someone who could be his grandfather. She even dressed up all day and led the children of their village astray. However, in front of the patriarch, Madame Zhao did not dare to say anything. She even had to lick her cheeks and say, Isn't that so? If others find out, what will they say about our Gu family? MDM Shen nodded. This child is already 7 years old, right? In a few more years, he will be able to marry a wife with some betrothal gifts. Our Gu village will have more people and everyone will be happy. You people from Shangbei village, don't come and join in the fun. Go home and live your lives well. What you said makes sense. Clan leader Gu looked very happy. He felt that bringing this concubine out was a great honor. However, Madame Zhao frowned. What betrothal gifts? It's not easy for us to raise him, yet we're preparing betrothal gift for him? He has his own hands and feet. He can earn it himself. If he can't earn it, then don't get married. That's his life. MDM Shen was a little surprised. You're not going to give him betrothal gifts? That's impossible. The county magistrate said it himself. Have you forgotten? No way. It's such an important thing. What did the county magistrate say? They really couldn't remember and panicked. Chapter 3:14. Shen's assistant MDM Shen shook her head and sighed. The county magistrate said that there are too few people in Yongning village now. It's lucky that this child survived the famine. We should nurture him well. When he grows up, he will offer some betrothal gifts and marry a good girl. He will give birth to more children to increase the population of Yongning Prefecture. But have you forgotten such an important thing? Well, the members of the Gu family looked at each other. The county magistrate did talk a lot back then, and he vaguely mentioned getting married and having children. But the county magistrate was a well-educated man. His words were full of twists and turns. One simple sentence had to get so complicated that it made them dizzy. Madame Shen clicked her tongue. Although the county magistrate might have said it casually, he might remember it at some point. I think we should take his words to heart. I even told my husband to pay some money for the wedding. The county magistrate will praise us later. B0x. Gu Gang was a little confused. When did he say that he was going to offer money? He had always been a money grubber. How could he give away money? Frowning, Gu Gang looked at his concubine. Madame Shen saw that the people from the Gu family were discussing this matter softly and did not notice her. She quickly whispered to Gu Gang, "Husband, why don't you understand? We can't let that child continue to stay in the Gu family. Look at how the Gu family treats him. He doesn't have enough to eat or wear. He's dressed like a beggar and they even let him work outside every day." Gu Gang was stunned for a moment before he heard her continue, "Husband, you're the chief. What will outsiders think of you when they see that the children in our village are living such a hard life? What will they think about the entire village? Do we still have our reputation? Do we still have our image? Look at the young man who came yesterday and was about to settle down here. Didn't he say that he met Bien Yuanji at the entrance of the village? If this child continues to stay in our village, it will be a disgrace to the Gu village and to you. If no one comes here to settle down in the future, where will you get the money?" Gu Gang's body trembled, and he suddenly came back to his senses. Bien Yuanji walked around the village in shabby clothes all day long, which made Gu Gang's eyes hurt. If outsiders saw him, they would think that his village was full of beggars. Seeing the change in his expression, Madame Shen continued, "So, we can't let Bien Yuanji stay in our village. If the county magistrate really remembers him and finds out that he's living such a hard life, he might blame the Gu family. However, as the head of the clan, you can't escape being scolded. Now that Ding Jincheng is finally willing to take the child away, just let him. When the county magistrate asks later, you can find a beautiful excuse and you might be praised." Gu Gang felt that what she said made too much sense. As expected, he had taken in the right concubine. She was much smarter than that woman at home. If not for the fact that they were in public, he would have hugged her and kissed her. Madame Shen pinched him. Gu Gang cleared his throat and said, "I did say that I wanted to prepare a gift for this child. Just 1 tael of silver. Old Gu, you have to find a good woman for this child. Just give her more betrothal gifts. It will be embarrassing if word gets out. It shows that you value the county magistrate's words and bring good luck to our Gu village." When Madame Zhao heard that they still had to pay so much money, she immediately refused and hurriedly said, "Patriarch, actually, our family is really poor. Look at how many children there are in my second and third son's families. Yuanji can't eat well or wear warm clothes here. Since the Ding family wants it, let's give it to the Ding family." When Ding Jincheng heard this, he did not expect things to take a turn for the better. A smile instantly appeared on his face. Chapter 315. Taken away. Ding Jincheng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Now, as long as he took this child away and changed his household register, he would be able to live up to Milan's entrustment. However, just as he was about to take Bien Yuanzi's hand, someone rushed out from the other side. "Ding Jincheng, how dare you!" Everyone suddenly turned around and saw Madame Hu running over with disheveled hair. As soon as she came over, she pulled Ding Jincheng back. After pulling him out of old Gus' house, she slapped him hard. "You're crazy. You actually want to bring this little bastard back. You can't even raise yourself. Why are you being a kind person and raising him? You're really crazy, crazy, crazy. Let me tell you, if you dare to bring him back, I'll beat him to death." B0x. Ding Jincheng's expression changed drastically. "Mother, what are you doing? Let go. Yuanji is living too hard a life here. I promised Mulan to take good care of him. Don't cause trouble." "You promised what?" "That little bastard was assigned to the old Gu family by the county magistrate. How dare you disobey the county magistrate's order? Do you want to die? Go back and don't come to the Gu village again, or I'll break your legs." Madame Hu was about to go crazy from anger. She thought that he had taken a fancy to that little B***tch and ran over here. She didn't expect him to adopt the little bastard for that Bien Milan who was infertile. She couldn't tell that her son was a devoted person. No wonder he didn't even like Miss Jiang. Bien Mulan, that be asterisk Tisich, still wanted to seduce her son's soul even after she died. When old Gu saw the sudden change in the situation, they were a little shocked. At this moment, they finally reacted and hurriedly went to stop her. Sister-in-law Hu, wait a moment. What's wrong with you? You came and went as you pleased. Do you think we're monkeys? It was Madame Jia who spoke. She reached out and blocked Madame Hu. Madame Hu was taller and stronger than her. She reached out and pushed her aside. Screw you. Tell that to the county magistrate if you dare. If the county magistrate says that he wants us to raise that bastard, he'll take him away without hesitation. Madame Jia immediately choked. The others present were also stunned. It was one thing for the Ding family to take Bien Yuanji away voluntarily, but the Gu family couldn't force them. Madame Hu snorted and pulled Ding Jincheng away. The latter was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. Why did his mother come all of a sudden? Mother, I'm not leaving. I want to raise Yuanji. Mulan sent me a dream last night and asked me to take good care of Yuanji. I can't. Shut up. I knew you were thinking about that little b asterisk tis. Why did she visit you in a dream? Do you think I'm easy to deceive? Madame Hu shouted outside. Old Ding, why are you still standing there? Hurry up and pull this embarrassing thing home. Madame Hu had pulled Mr. Ding over with her. However, when they arrived at the village entrance, Madame Hu heard that Ding Jincheng wanted to bring the child home, so she ran over quickly. At this moment, Madame Hu called out to Father Ding. Father Ding was a burly and strong man. No matter how much Ding Jincheng didn't want to leave, he was pulled away. The others looked at each other. Gu Gang lowered his head and quietly asked MDM Shen, "What should we do now?" MDM Shen was also a little confused. She glanced at a corner without a trace and said in a low voice, "Let's wait and see." The most important part of taking Bien Yuanji away was Ding Jincheng. Now that he was gone, how could they continue? The Gu family was especially furious. When they saw Bien Yuanji, they glared at him fiercely. If not for the fact that the onlookers were still around, Madame Zhao would have gone forward to hit him. Chapter 316. Unprofessional. However, when she passed by him, Madame Zhao still snorted. There's no need to eat tonight. Bien Yuanji slightly lowered his head. He knew that every time his brother-in-law came, he would have no dinner. Hence, he did not say a word and just stood there motionless with his head lowered. This time, even Gu Chuanzong was a little angry. He had made a fool of himself for nothing, so when he walked to his side, he said, "You don't have to eat tomorrow. You're just causing trouble for the family." Bien Yuanji didn't want to cry, but he couldn't control himself. B0x. It was fine for Madame Zhao to scold him. Her mother said that she was not his biological grandmother, but his grandfather was different. Why didn't he treat him as his grandson? The onlookers gradually dispersed. Watching Bien Yuanji standing alone at the gate of the courtyard, they all let out a sigh. Actually, so what if Ding Jincheng took him away? It would be strange if Madame Hu, that shrew, treated him well. He was afraid that his life would be worse than living in the Gu family. After all, the Gu family were his relatives. Gradually, no one was left at the entrance of Old Gus' house, except for Bien Yuanji. Although it was already spring, his clothes were still very thin and cold. Suddenly, a person stood in front of him. He was tall and big as if he was blocking the wind in front of him. Bien Yuanji raised his reddened eyes and a white steamed bun appeared in front of him. He was stunned for a moment before he heard the man in front of him say, "Eat. I'll warm you up. Hold on for another day." After saying that, he stuffed the steamed bun into his arms and strode away. Bien Yuanji was stunned. The white steamed bun was even bigger and whiter than the one the man gave him yesterday. It looked delicious. He couldn't help but take a big bite. Delicious. Wiping his tears, Bien Yuanji turned around and ate the white steamed bun in big mouthfuls. Then he wiped his mouth and smiled. That was great. A steamed bun could last him until tomorrow. These 2 days he always met good people who gave him steamed buns to eat. Xiao Qingyuan, who was standing far away, saw the relaxed smile on his face. He then turned around and left Gu village in large strides. Gu Yundong was still in the carriage. As it was a little far away, she did not see Madame Hu and Father Ding, who had arrived at Gu village from the other side to take Ding Jinsheng away. It was only when Xiao Qingyan came over and told her the process that she frowned fiercely. Go and Zhu, who were standing outside the carriage, also kicked the tree trunk at the side angrily. Why did that woman come out to cause trouble? Miss, what should we do next? Why don't we trick Madame Hu out and let Ding Jinsheng finish the matter before letting her go back? How can we do that? We still have to get the child's household register out. It won't be a short time. Gu Yundong also shook her head. After Madame Hu finds out about what happened today, she will definitely stay by Ding Jinsheng's side all day long. We won't be able to deceive her. Then what do we do? Gu Yundong thought for a moment and tapped her fingers lightly on the windowsill. After a while, she raised her eyebrows. Got it. What is it? Go and Zhu hurriedly approached. Gu Yundong smiled. I'm a professional in acting. Madame Hu did not believe that Ding Jinsheng dreamed of her cousin? Then let her see her in person. Let's go to town first and buy some things we need. This time, she couldn't use the space. The town was close, and the carriage arrived not long after. Gu Yundong bought a lot of miscellaneous items. Then, she parked the carriage beside an inconspicuous small mountain ditch by the roadside of Shangbei village. Then she asked Xiao Qingyuan, Go, and a pig to get off while she fiddled with the items on the carriage for a long time. Chapter 317. Wetting her pants after a long time, Gu Yundong drew the curtain. Unexpectedly, when they showed their faces, Go and Zhu took a few steps back and shouted, "Ghost!" Gu Yundong glared at them. Who are you calling? Her glare made the two of them shiver in fear. Xiao Qingyuan was still very calm. He went forward and sized her up. I can't see your original appearance at all. B0x. It's fine. Anyway, ghosts are the same. Madame Hu won't be able to recognize if I'm my cousin or not. Her hair was down and her face was pale. Blood flowed from the corners of her eyes and nostrils, and there were heavy dark circles around her eyes. Coupled with her bright red lips, anyone who saw her would be frightened to death. How could they recognize her? If Madame Hu really had the guts, Gu Yundong would admire her. Gu Yundong had already looked at himself in the mirror in the carriage and expressed his satisfaction. Only then did she look at Go and Zhu. The two of them slowly leaned against each other, wanting to hug each other for warmth. It was true. When Lady Gu looked at him, they felt as if their souls were about to leave their bodies. Gu Yundong glanced at them. It's your turn. Our turn? What are we going to do? Gu Yundong took out a set of things from the carriage. You'll pretend to be the black and white ghosts. No, they wanted to stay away from her. Now, she looked terrifying even during the day. They even had to be by her side at night. They were so scared that they peed their pants. Gu Yundong did not care about them. She made a tall hat to increase their height and make them oppressing. Coupled with the long tongue and dark circles under their eyes, they looked good. After dressing up, the group went straight to Shangbei village. When it was dark, they got out of the carriage and went straight to the Ding family. Go and Zhu had adapted to Gu Yundong's attire and found it interesting. Xiao Qingyuan stood in the courtyard to keep watch. Gu Yundong went to Madame Hu and Father Ding's room and stood by the bed with Go and Zhu, who were acting as the black and white ghosts. She reached out and patted Madame Hu's face. Madame Hu frowned and waved her hand. She turned around and continued sleeping. Gu Yundong frowned and asked Go to wake her up. However, Madame Hu was sleeping like a dead pig. No matter how they shouted or patted, she couldn't wake up from the deep sleep. Zhu waved his hand. Let me do it. He went up and pulled Madame Hu's hairs out, 2 at a time. Gu Yundong was speechless. What if you make her bald? Fortunately, this method worked. Madame Hu gasped in pain and rubbed her eyes. Unexpectedly, when she opened her eyes, 3 terrifying faces suddenly appeared in front of her. Madame Hu screamed and quickly crawled back, pressing down on Father Ding's finger. It was so painful that he suddenly woke up too. Gu Yundong shushed her. Don't scream. Madame Hu instantly felt like she was being strangled. She stared at the 3 people in front of her with wide eyes and trembling hands. Mr. Ding Tetfatherding was so frightened that his face turned pale, and he could not say a word. Gu Yundong could not help but sniffle. Why did it smell like urine? She glanced at Madame Hu and wanted to leave, but she held her breath and stayed. "Mother," she called out faintly. Madame Hu shivered again. Who are you? I don't know you." "Boo-hoo, why don't you know me?" "Milan. I died so tragically. Milan tdt? Why are you looking for me? You're dead, but I didn't kill you. Boo-hoo, let me go." Chapter 318. This is how people die. Father Ding, who was standing at the side, probably felt that he was a man. At least he mustered up a little courage and said fearfully, Yes, Milan. Back then, you were the one who said that you would save your share of rations for your brother to eat. That's why you starved to death. We only said a few words to you and didn't force you." Gu Yundong was stunned. So there were such twists and turns. It was obvious what kind of state Bien Mulan was in to make such a decision back then. The Ding couple had been complaining about her because she had been married for 4 years without getting pregnant and had to take another child with her on the way to escape. It was obvious how unpleasant the couple's words were. Intellectually, Gu Yundong knew that this was Bien Mulan's choice. But as Bien Mulan's cousin, she really wanted to strangle the two people in front of her. Go tugged at her from behind. Gu Yundong then continued, "Yes, I was the one who voluntarily saved the rations for my younger brother. But what did I say before I died? I asked you to take good care of Yung for me. You agreed. Did you send my younger brother, whom I exchanged my life for, to the old Gu family to be abused?" B0x. The Ding couple was speechless. What could they say? They did agree back then, but wasn't Bien Mulan going to die at that time? Could they let her die with her eyes wide open? But neither of them dared to say it now, especially when Gu Yundong's tears of blood started to flow down slowly. "The King of Hell said that my wish in this world had not been fulfilled. My obsession was too deep, and I could not be reincarnated. He asked me to come to the human realm to do my last thing. In the end, when I came here, I realized that you guys actually treated Yuanji like this. My poor brother, his life is so bitter." She suddenly cried. Immediately after, a bowl that Madame Hu had placed by the windowsill suddenly fell to the ground and shattered. Madame Hu and Father Ding's faces turned pale. The two of them hugged each other tightly. With a bang, a small stool at the side fell over. Bam! The closet door opened by itself. Go moved his fingers behind his back and quietly retracted the fishing lines that were tied to these things. But Madame Hu was already frightened. "Mulan, we didn't do it on purpose. Boo-hoo, it was the county magistrate who made the decision. It had nothing to do with us." Gu Yundong's voice continued to sound ethereal. "I don't care. He can't stay in the Gu family. He can't stay in the Gu family. He can't stay in the Gu family. All right. We won't let him stay in old Gus' house. We'll bring him back tomorrow morning. Really, don't come looking for us." Gu Yundong slowly looked at her and suddenly smiled. The moment her blood-red lips parted, she was so frightening that her hair stood on end. Even Go and Zhu, who were standing beside her, had to restrain themselves with all their might to prevent their legs from moving outwards. "That's what you said, The husband and wife nodded repeatedly. "We promised to bring him out. You go. Just go." Satisfied, Gu Yundong slowly turned around. Madame Hu was about to heave a sigh of relief when she suddenly turned around and continued to smile at her. "By the way, there's something I forgot to say." What's the matter?" Madame Hu was trembling with fear. She only hoped that this ghost would finish speaking and leave quickly. She didn't even dare to look up at her face. It turned out that people were like this after they died. Chapter 319. Picking someone up. Gu Yundong smiled again and opened her bloody mouth. Before Madame Hu almost fainted, she said, "My younger brother's name is Bien Yu, not little bastard. If I find out that you call him that next time, I'll come and take you away with me." Madame Hu nodded quickly. Gu Yundong's face suddenly bled from all 7 orifices. She opened her mouth and giggled. Even her teeth were covered in blood. Madame Hu had just quietly looked up when her eyes rolled back in fright and she fainted. Mr. Ding was stunned for a moment. Then he closed his eyes and fainted. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. She gave Ah Go and Zhu a look, and the three of them left silently and quickly. B0X. Calm Father Ding only opened one eye quietly when he could not feel any movement. There was no one in the room. The door was open, and only the wind was blowing in. He immediately went limp. His back was drenched in sweat, and he shivered violently when the wind blew. After a long time, he pushed Madame Hu away in disdain and got out of bed trembling. He walked to the door and planned to close it. Unexpectedly, he saw his son lying unconscious on the ground in the central room. She was shocked and thought that Bien Mulan had killed him. He hurriedly went forward to take a look and heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his son had just fainted. Father Ding quickly woke Ding Jincheng up and asked him what was going on. Ding Jincheng didn't know either. He rubbed his head and said with a frown, "I just heard Mother's loud cry and quickly came over to take a look. As soon as I walked to the central room, I was knocked out." Father Ding trembled and quickly told him what had happened. Ding Jincheng didn't quite believe it, but when he returned to his parents' room and saw the wet sheets on the bed, they were clearly frightened. The two of them quickly went forward and woke Madame Hu up. Madame Hu was still in shock. She grabbed Ding Jincheng's hand and said, "You must bring little Bien Yuanji back. You can't let him stay in the Gu family." "No." Ding Jincheng nodded repeatedly. None of them dared to sleep that night. Because Madame Hu's bed was smelly and messy, in addition to the broken bowls and fallen stools on the ground, and the open wardrobe door, everything indicated the terrifying scene that had just happened. Hence, the three of them went to Ding Jincheng's room and waited until dawn, shivering. Then, they changed their clothes and rushed to Gu Village. The people of Gu Village were about to go out to work when they saw the three members of the Ding family rushing over. What was going on? Was yesterday's incident not over yet? Some people who liked to join in the fun and were not important followed behind. When they saw that they were indeed going to Old Gus' house, they immediately became excited. Someone also went to inform Gu Gang. Not long after, the entrance of Old Gus' house was filled with people. When Gu Chuanzong came out and saw them, his expression immediately turned ugly. "What are you doing here?" "Grandpa, we're here to pick Yuanji up." Ding Jincheng took a step forward, his attitude exceptionally friendly and respectful. "Who's your grandpa?" Gu Chuanzong's face darkened. "But, do you want to take Yuanji away again? Yesterday you refused no matter what. Is there no end to your family's drama?" "That's right." Madame Zhao followed them out. "What do you take my Gu family for? Do you think you can say whatever you want? Get lost." Madame Hu was furious and wanted to pounce on Madame Zhao and scratch her face. Chapter 320, 5 Taels of Silver and He's Yours. However, she could not do that. She even had to squeeze out a smile and apologize. "Uncle Ent, don't be angry. We weren't clear-headed yesterday, right? We went back and thought about it for the entire night. We felt that we had let Mulan down. Yuanji was entrusted to us by Mulan. We can't just leave him in the old Gu family. We feel guilty." The members of the Gu family acted as if they had heard a joke, especially Madame Jia. She leaned against the door and laughed hysterically. "Sister-in-law Hu, why are you acting like this every day? I don't think you feel guilty. Yesterday, you said that you didn't want Yuanji. Today, you came over to ask for him again. What if you say that you don't want him tomorrow? Who can stand you making a fuss like this?" "That's right. Our Gu family is very busy. We don't have time to mess around with you," Gu Dai said loudly. The three members of the Ding family did not look good. They secretly despised him in their hearts. "Busy? You, Gu Dai, are the laziest sloth in this village." Madame Hu suppressed the anger in her heart and said with a smile, No. I promise that after we take Yuanji away this time, we won't send him back." "Who would believe you?" Madame Hu was not someone who could be trusted. B0X. Calm, the third son of the Gu family, Gu Dao, stroked his chin and suddenly said, "Sister-in-law Hu's change today is too strange. Is your family plotting something? Are you going to sell Yuanji?" Madame Chang, the third daughter-in-law, asked softly. Bien Yuanji, who had just walked out of the courtyard, was stunned. His small body shook violently, and he barely stood against the wall. Madame Jia's eyes lit up when she heard that. She rushed to Madame Hu and said, "Sister-in-law Hu, third sister-in-law is right, right? You want to sell Yuan Ji? Let me tell you, that won't do. Yuan Ji has met the county magistrate. Can you bear the responsibility if you sell him? I'm not selling him. Who would believe you?" Madame Jia snorted coldly. "Then why are your words yesterday and today completely different? I told you I felt guilty when I went back and thought about it. Who are you trying to fool? It's fine if you want to take Yuan Ji away. Give us some silver. We've helped you raise him for so long. You'll have to pay for his food, clothes, and accommodation. 5 taels, take him away." Madame Jia glanced at Gu Chuanzong. Seeing that he did not say anything, she thought that he had no objections. 5 taels of silver was not a small amount. At least for now, the Ding family could only take out this much. Bian Yuanji also looked at Gu Chuanzong. After a while, he finally walked to Gu Chuanzong's side. "Grandpa, are you really?" Gu Chuanzong frowned and sighed. "Yuanji, it's not that I don't want to raise you, but you heard it yourself. It's your sister who entrusted you to the Ding family. If you leave with the Ding family, your sister will rest in peace. Your uncle and aunt have taken good care of you recently. It's only right for the Ding family to give them some money." Bian Yuanzi's heart turned cold as he let go of Gu Chuanzong's sleeve. "I should have known. Forget it. It doesn't matter." Madame Hu was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She glared at Madame Jia and said, "5 taels of silver. Why don't you rob me? Are you giving it to me or not? If you don't give it, Yuan Ji won't be able to leave with you." Madame Hu gritted her teeth. "This be asterisk. Jia Meizi, don't force me. If you force me, I will say anything." Madame Jia raised her eyebrows. "Oh, you're threatening me? Tell me, let's see what you have to say." Madame Hu was furious. "They'll tell them about the lousy, bad, and vicious things you did." Chapter 321. How was Madame Yang injured? What did I do? I, Jia Meizi, do things openly and honorably. Don't slander me. Madame Hu had never seen such a shameless person. You do things openly and honorably? Have you forgotten about Gu Dajiang's wife and sister-in-law? Do you want me to tell you? Madame Jia's expression changed, but the other's curiosity was piqued. Sister-in-law Hu, what's wrong with Gu Dajiang's wife? Isn't she a fool? Tell us, what did Jia Meizi do? Jia Meizi panicked. She took 2 steps forward and wanted to shut Madame Hu's mouth. However, Madame Chang took a step forward and said, "My second sister-in-law has always done things with a clear conscience. Sister-in-law Hu, don't spout nonsense here. You're slandering my second sister-in-law and even bringing up my first sister-in-law. You have to give us these 5 taels of silver today. Otherwise, don't even think about taking Bian Yuanji away." A clear conscience? Madame Hu was so angry that she laughed. She pointed at Madame Jia and said, "She, Jia Meizi, has a vicious heart. Back then, she was the one who smashed Gu Dajiang's wife by the river and pushed her into the water. I saw it with my own eyes. It was real. If not for that, would Gu Dajiang's wife have become stupid?" As soon as she said this, there was silence. B0XO. Calm. Everyone looked at Madame Jia and Madame Hu. Back then, didn't Madame Yang fall into the river? Was she pushed down? This. Madame Jia screamed and pounced forward. She immediately started fighting with Madame Hu. "You're spouting feces and talking nonsense. I'll tear your mouth apart for slandering me." She was ruthless, and Madame Hu was not to be outdone. She was much stronger than Madame Jia. After a while, she rode on her and slapped her a few times. "I'm slandering you? I saw it with my own eyes. I even saw you took away the stone that hit her head and found a place to bury it. Do you want me to take everyone and dig out that stone for you to see?" "I didn't." "You're talking nonsense." "I didn't." The 2 of them fought more and more fiercely. Madame Zhao was so angry that she scolded, "What are you doing? How dare you hit someone at the entrance of my Gu family? Second brother, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and pull her away. Third sister-in-law, are you stupid? Why aren't you helping? Oh. Madame Chang went over, but she didn't dare to get close. She tugged at them twice to show that she was trying. Then, she saw Madame Hu wave a hand over and fall to the ground. Gu Da helped her back. Gu De wanted to help, but Father Ding was still there. Gu Gang could not stand it anymore and shouted, "Enough! Stop fighting!" As he spoke, he pointed at the onlookers and said, "All of you, go up and separate them." Only then did the people from Gu village take action. One of them pulled Madame Hu, and another pulled Madame Jia. Gu Gang snorted. Gu Dajiang's family is gone. What's the use of saying this now? Gu Chuanzong, do you want to give Bian Yuanji to the Ding family or not? If you do, you can just accept 1 tael of silver. If you don't, you can raise him yourself and give him betrothal gifts in the future. When Gu Chuanzong saw that things had come to this, he quickly nodded. Yes. Gu Gang looked at Father Ding again. What about you guys? The Ding family could afford 1 tael of silver, but Madame Hu was unwilling. However, when she thought of Bien Milan who came to look for her in the middle of the night, she could only nod. Let's give it to them. They're like a group of beggars. After giving them the money, Ding Jinsheng carried out Bien Yuanji, who had become numb and didn't speak anymore. Then, he said to the Gu family, "Let's move his household register now." Chapter 322, Finally done? Why are you in such a hurry? Well, go tomorrow. Gu Chuanzong was unhappy. Mdam Shen tugged at Gu Gang's sleeve and said softly, "Let's quickly finish this matter so that there won't be any complications." Gu Gang thought about it and agreed. Madame Hu was capricious, so he could not give her a chance to go back on her word. Hence, he glared at Gu Chuanzong and said, "Why tomorrow? It's still early. You can come back after you're done." As the village chief, he had to make a trip. Therefore, he walked up to Gu Chuanzong and said, "Give me the silver." B0XO. Calm Gu Chuanzong was stunned. Gu Gang glared at him. "But, don't you need to bribe to move the household register?" Dr. Gu T could only give him the silver. After giving it to him, he suddenly realized that the Ding family should pay for it. However, Gu Gang could not be bothered with him. He got someone to get an ox cart and sat on it. Dr. Gu could only get into the car unwillingly. Ding Jinsheng asked Father Ding to bring Madame Hu back to the village first. He could do this. Madame Hu wanted to follow him, worried that he would be at a disadvantage alone. However, she had just fought with Madame Jia. Her face was bruised, her clothes were torn, and her right foot was twisted. Hence, she could only remind Ding Jinsheng to be more careful. Only then did Father Ding carry her back. The 3 of them staggered out of Gu village on the ox cart. Not long after they left the village, they saw a carriage parked by the roadside. There was a young man sitting on the shaft of the carriage. They did not know him. Only Ding Jinsheng remained silent with his head lowered and Bian Yuanji in his arms. Gu Gang and Gu Chuanzong had a discussion curiously. Not long after the ox cart left, Xiao Qingyuan walked over from afar. Zhu lifted the curtain and jumped up. That's enough. As long as they settle the household registration. Let's go. Gu Yundong relaxed slightly and turned to look out of the window. He instantly felt refreshed. Therefore, she didn't notice Xiao Qingyuan's hesitant expression. However, before Xiao Qingyuan left, he asked Ago to stay behind and instructed him to do something. The carriage did not move very fast. After all, the speed of the ox cart was limited, so they could only move slowly. After entering the county city, Gu Yundong went to the inn to see Madame Yang. Madame Yang didn't see her the entire night and was a little anxious. If Xiao Qingyuan hadn't come back to report, she wouldn't have been able to sleep at night. Now that she saw her, she quickly pulled her back. "Dong, I missed you so much." "I miss you too. Have you eaten?" Madame Yang nodded, and Gu Yundong accompanied her to talk while waiting for news from Ding Jinsheng. Ding Jinsheng had already entered the county office. The person in charge of household registration was the secretary, so he could be considered to know Gu Chuanzong. Now that Ding Jinsheng had come personally and explained the situation, he did not make things difficult for him. However, Ding Jinsheng didn't want to transfer Bian Yuanji to the Ding family. Instead, he wanted to give Bien Yuanji an independent house. Yuanji is the only son of the Bien family. He's going to carry on the family name. If he moves to the Ding family, what if things get messed up in the future? Gu Chuanzong pursed his lips. Things get messed up? Wasn't he just afraid that the child would take away his assets when he grew up? However, this was no longer his business. The three of them completed their household registration and walked back. However, Ding Jincheng said that he would buy clothes for Bien Yuanji instead of going with them. In the end, after Gu Gang and the other man left, Ding Jincheng led the child straight to the inn. They didn't even look at the clothing store when they passed by. Bien Yuanji thought that he had brought him here to sell him. Especially when he saw Ding Jincheng bringing him to knock on a door of the room in the inn and saw a rich lady standing inside, this thought reached its peak. Chapter 323. Your cousin Yundong. Only Gu Yundong and Madame Yang were in the room. Xiao Qingyuan and the rest had returned to their rooms. Ding Jincheng let out a sigh of relief after bringing him over. Yundong, I've brought him over. This is his household register. I'll leave it here. After saying that, he placed the thing on the table and turned to leave. Seeing this, Bien Yuanji subconsciously took 2 steps forward. However, he soon stopped and watched the door close in front of him. It was as if all the light had been blocked outside. He stood there alone, not knowing what to do. B0XO. Calm, a gentle voice came from behind him. Are you Yuanji? Bien Yuanzi's petite body trembled slightly as he slowly turned around. He then took 2 steps back and pressed his back against the wall, watching her carefully. Naturally, he did not recognize Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong was dressed very differently from before. Even if she was wearing the same clothes as before, he would not recognize his cousin. After all, the last time they met was in the first month of last year when he went to visit his uncle. He did not stay for long. Most of the time, he played with Gu Yunshu, who was about the same age, and did not speak much to Gu Yundong. When Gu Yundong saw his frightened expression, she cursed the Gu family in his heart. She took 2 steps closer to him. Bien Yuanji wanted to hide into the wall. You don't remember me? Then do you remember your eldest uncle? Gu Yundong stopped in front of him and squatted down to ask him. Bien Yuanji was stunned. Eldest uncle? Of course, he remembered that eldest uncle doted on him a lot. Before his sister died, she had said that if he returned to his hometown and didn't see his parents, he should look for his eldest uncle or 4th uncle. However, when he arrived at the Gu family, he couldn't find his eldest uncle or 4th uncle. He only saw his 2nd and 3rd uncles, who had never treated him well. Gu Yundong tried her best to make the smile on her face look kind and gentle. I'm your eldest uncle's daughter, cousin Yundong. Do you remember? Bien Yuanzi's body was not as tense as before. He just widened his eyes in surprise. Gu Yundong asked again, do you still remember Ashu? I remember that you guys played together last year and you said that he was your best friend. I'm Ashu's sister. Ashu? Eldest uncle? Bien Yunji finally opened his small mouth and muttered softly. He looked at Gu Yundong, who was showing him kindness, and vaguely felt that he had seen her before. Cousin? Yes, I'm your cousin. Gu Yundong smiled. My current home is very far away. It's called Yongfu Village. I came back here to look for your eldest uncle, but I couldn't find him. I met Ding Jincheng and found out that you had been sent to the Gu family and had suffered a lot. That's why I asked him to bring you out. Yunji, are you willing to go home with me? Go home. Bien Yuanzi's mind was in a mess. It turned out that she didn't want to buy him as a slave. Only then did Gu Yundong reach out and hold his tiny shoulders. She nodded and said, yes, he'll bring you back to your eldest uncle's house. Yunshu and Yunka are both there. Cousin and your eldest aunt are also there. Bien Yunji came back to his senses and nodded quickly. I'm willing to. I can work, cook, wash clothes and feed pigs. They'll go to eldest uncle's house. Is that okay? Although he was unfamiliar with his cousin in front of him, he still remembered Ashu. Even if he was asked to go over and continue working, it did not matter to him. Chapter 324. It feels like a dream. Ah Shu was over there. He was his best friend. When he was sad, he could talk to Ah Shu. Ah Shu did not bully and laugh at him like the other cousins of the Gu family. Gu Yundong's heart ached when she heard what he said. She tightened her grip on Gu Yundong's shoulders and slowly released her grip when she felt the thin and weak bones under her palm. You don't have to work. When you come to eldest uncle's house, you just have to take care of yourself and help do what you can when we're busy. You're our family, not a servant. Family? It seemed like a long time since he had a family by his side. B0XO. Calm blinking his eyes, Bien Yuanji was confused and in disbelief. He felt like he was dreaming. Gu Yundong patted his head. Ah Shu must be very happy to see you. She stood up and held his hand as she walked towards Madame Yang, who had been standing at the side. Do you remember eldest aunt? Bien Yuanji raised his head. He had an impression of Madame Yang. Firstly, it was because Madame Yang's situation was special and he easily remembered her. Secondly, it was because she was an adult and he had to greet the elders when he went to his uncle's house. He spoke more to her. When he entered just now, he was afraid and did not dare to look around. Only now did he notice her. Madame Yang also squatted down and hugged his small body. She patted his back gently and said with a smile, "Let's go home. They'll bring you home. Don't be afraid. Dong Dong is here. Don't be afraid." Wah, Bien Yuanji suddenly burst into tears. Perhaps it was because Madame Yang was an elder, and her smile was reassuring. Her embrace was warm, and her voice also made his uneasy emotions relax. Immediately, all his discomfort and grievances surged and he could not help but cry until he was hoarse. Madame Yang was shocked. She looked up at Gu Yundong helplessly. Gu Yundong blinked at her. Madame Yang patted Bien Yuanzi's back gently. Don't cry, don't cry. Be a good boy, don't cry. Bien Yuanji had been suffering for too long. He had been treated like livestock by his relatives in the Gu family. Now that he was in the arms of his aunt, he finally understood what it meant to have a family member. Not all blood relations could be called family. He was crying so hard that he was out of breath. Seeing that he was about to faint, Gu Yundong went forward and pulled him out of Madame Yang's arms. She wiped his face with a handkerchief. Stop crying. It's all in the past. Are you hungry? Let's eat first. You can take a shower and sleep. We'll talk after you rest, okay? Gu Yundong's temper was much better now, especially when facing children. She was especially patient. Yes, this was all thanks to Yunshu, Yunke, and Madame Yang. After all, these were 3 babies. Now, with the addition of Bien Yuanji, Gu Yundong suddenly felt that she had the potential to be a kindergarten teacher. She suddenly shivered and got up to open the cover on the table. The food had been prepared long ago, and now it was warm enough to eat. Bien Yuanji was indeed very hungry. He had only eaten a steamed bun last night. At the sight of the delicious food, he couldn't help but swallow hard. However, he was probably tortured by the Gu family for too long. He still asked carefully, "Can I really eat it?" Gu Yundong smiled at him. "You didn't eat much in the past. Now, you can only eat soft porridge and some light and refreshing dishes. You can slowly eat something better later." Okay. That was good too. This seemed to be plain porridge. Even old Master Gu could not eat such porridge. Chapter 325. Dog hasn't returned. Gu Yundong saw that although he nodded, he did not dare to do anything, so she scooped a bowl for him and placed it in front of him. Eat. She also scooped a bowl for Madame Yang. Madame Yang was very happy. She took a sip happily and said to Bien Yu, "Eat quickly. After you're done, it'll teach you to solve the puzzle. The puzzle is very fun. After you finish it, you'll see Ah Shu and Kiki." Bien Yuanji was curious. What was a puzzle? He couldn't help but take a sip. Then, he felt his entire body warm up. It was delicious. More delicious than anything he had ever eaten. Updated on B0X and Zuru. Calm, he wanted to cry again. Bien Yuji hurriedly wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and continued eating with a smile. Gu Yundong got up and went out, asking the waiter to prepare a bucket of hot water. She had bought 2 sets of clean clothes and some necessities for Bien Yuanji. Unexpectedly, when she opened the door, she saw Xiao Qingyun standing not far away, looking at the door. Gu Yundong walked over. "What's wrong? I heard crying just now." That was why he was worried. Gu Yundong's expression darkened. "It's all the Gu family's fault. It's fine. He's crying everything out." Dr. Gu was a selfish person. He didn't treat Bian Yuanji as his grandson at all. This child suffered worse than her family did back then. At least Gu Yundong and her siblings had Gu Dajiang to protect them. Although Gu Dajiang was usually so busy that he could not take care of them, the Gu family was really afraid of angering him. But Bian Yuanji, who didn't have his parents by his side and didn't have Gu Dajiang and fourth Uncle Gu protecting him, was almost tormented to death. They wouldn't do this even to strangers, right? Although I didn't find father this time, it's a good thing to bring Yuanji back. Older Aunt Gu had a total of 3 children. The eldest, Bian Mulan, didn't make it through the escape. The second child was a son, but unfortunately, he didn't grow up. When he was 4 years old, he died because of a fever. Older Aunt Gu had been traumatized for a long time. It was only 8 years ago that she was pregnant with Bian Yuanji. He was older Aunt Gu's only bloodline. As they were talking, the waiter came over with the cold water that was to be mixed with the hot water. Only then did Gu Yundong open the door and let them in. The 2 people in the room were almost full. Bian Yuanzi's stomach had shrunk due to hunger, so he was already full after eating a little bit. Although he still wanted to eat, he touched his stomach and obediently put down the spoon. It was difficult to bathe after eating. Gu Yundong showed him the new clothes and asked him to choose one. Bian Yuanji widened his eyes in astonishment as he looked at the brand new clothes. It took him a long time to touch them. The fabric was very comfortable and seemed to be very warm. It was completely incomparable to the rough clothes he was wearing. He looked up. "Are you going to let me wear them?" "Of course. Don't you like the clothes?" Bian Yuanji hurriedly nodded his head. "Yes, I do. Take a bath and change into it later." Bian Yuanji couldn't help but burst out into laughter. After eating, he even had new clothes to wear. It was as if he was dreaming. He was so silly that Gu Yundong could not help but rub his head. Gu Yundong waited for the waiter to bring them hot water before she went out to call a Shu, who happened to pass by, to help Bian Yuanji bathe. Although Madame Yang was an elder, Yuanji was 7 years old after all. At this era, it was important for men and women to sit at different tables when they reached 7 years old. However, the conditions of rural families were limited, so even if they had grown up, they might still live in the same room. Madame Yang sat obediently outside the screen, completing the puzzle. From time to time, she would say a few words to Yuanji to prevent him from feeling nervous and uneasy in the same room as the unfamiliar Ashu. Gu Yundong went to look for Xiao Qingyun. She was curious why Ago was not back yet. Chapter 326, Itchy Hands. Unexpectedly, just as she knocked on his door, Xiao Qingyun happened to be coming out. He seemed to be looking for her for something. "What is it? Are you done over there?" Xiao Qingyun asked as he let her in and closed the door. Gu Yundong nodded. "I felt that you had something to tell me just now." "What's wrong? Also, what did you ask Ago to do? Why isn't he back yet?" Xiao Qingyun poured her a cup of tea and sat opposite her. "There's indeed something. Updated on B0X and 0. Calm as he spoke, he pushed the cup in front of her. He realized that she would always drink water when she was angry. Gu Yundong looked at him in surprise. "This person?" She took the cup of water silently. "Go ahead." When the Ding family went to ask for the child today, they quarreled with the Gu family. At that time, Madame Hu said that she saw with her own eyes that your mother was hit on the head and pushed into the river by Gu Da's wife back then. That's how she became like this. Gu Yundong suddenly stood up. "What did you say?" "I don't know if Madame Hu said it in her anger or if it's true. I let Ago stay in Gu village and keep an eye on old Gus family to see if it's true. If he can't find out, we can only ask Madame Hu." Gu Yundong's face was ashen. It was not an accident that her mother fell into the water and became like this. Was Jia Meizi the one who smashed and pushed her? Her mother had already suffered enough in the Gu family. She was low-key and hardworking, but Jia Meizi actually wanted her life. She suddenly lowered her head and took 2 sips of water. Xiao Qingyuan immediately poured more water for her. Don't worry. We'll talk about it when dog comes back. Gu Yundong slowly sat down, her gaze cold. Back then, when Madame Yang became like this, she had suffered so many insults and abuses. There were always some malicious fellows in the village who would deliberately trick her when they saw her, giving her something she shouldn't eat or making her do something she shouldn't do. In the beginning, Madame Yang was really miserable. At that time, Gu Yundong was still young and had to take care of her younger sister, who was born half a year ago and had no one to take care of her. However, those bastards from the Gu family deliberately made Madame Yang go out to wash clothes and shoot pig grass. It was only when Gu Dajiang suddenly returned and saw Madame Yang being forced to kneel on the ground and kowtow to someone with his own eyes that he got angry and smashed a stone at that person's head. He had injured the guy, and Gu Gang had found an excuse to beat him up. At that time, Gu Dajiang's gaze was fierce, and he looked like he wanted to perish together with him. This made Gu Gang a little afraid. He was worried that he would really anger Gu Dajiang, so he could only ask him to compensate the victim and let him go. After that day, Gu Dajiang didn't go to the county restaurant to continue being accountant. He stayed at the Gu residence and didn't work. He had to take care of Madame Yang and the children. Dr. Gu had no choice but to give in and promise to let Madame Yang stay at home and work in the future so that she would not be bullied by the villagers. Only then did Gu Dajiang return to Xingxing restaurant. He had no choice but to go back. Madame Yang still needed money to treat her illness. He had to earn money. Gu Yundong had always thought that Madame Yang's fall into the water was an accident. After all, someone in the village had said that they had personally seen her fall into the water. Then, Madame Yang was rescued immediately and did not drown. Unexpectedly, the culprit was Jia Meizi. Very good. Her hands were itchy now. Calm down first. Go should be back soon. We'll ask about the situation then. Alright. I'll wait for Go to come back. She said word by word, almost gnashing her teeth. Chapter 327. How dare you kill her? At this moment, Go was in the Gu family's small storeroom. Although it was called a small storeroom, it was actually filled with various hoes, farm tools, dustpans, and baskets. There was also a medium-sized wooden board in the room, which was Bian Yuanzi's bed. Go sat on the wooden board and looked at the storeroom that was leaking in all directions. He had a better understanding of the inhumaneness of the Gu family. He was waiting for Dr. Gu to come back. It would take some time for Dr. Gu to go to the county to move the household register. Updated on B0X and Zulu. As for the rest of the Gu family, they seemed to be staying in their rooms. No one came out, and no one knew what they were talking about. It was not until Gu Chuanzong entered the courtyard with a dark expression that Madame Zhao came out to welcome him. Gu Chuanzong did not stop walking. He said to her, "Go and call everyone over." With that he entered the room. Madame Zhao muttered, but she still went to call everybody. When Go heard the commotion outside, he quickly stood up from the wooden board and quietly crawled to the window under the main house to squat. The main house was the best place in the entire Gu family. Behind the window was a small courtyard. It had been cultivated and planted as a vegetable field. When Go came out, he also took out the wooden board from the storeroom. At this moment, he put the wooden board up and leaned against the wall, squatting down. The main room was filled with people one after another. The second and third branches, together with old Gu and Madame Zhao, filled up the not-so-big main room. Gu Chuanzong raised his head and glanced at them. His gaze finally landed on Madame Jia. Was that woman from the Ding family telling the truth? Madame Jia wanted to play dumb. "Father, what are you talking about? Are you serious? How can I believe that shrew's words? If I can't believe it, why did you go up and hit her?" Dr. Gu slammed the table. "Do you think everyone is blind? No one will believe you if you say that you're not guilty." Madame Jia immediately lowered her head and muttered softly. However, Gu Dai said, "Father, how long has it been? Why are you still bringing it up? Besides, eldest brother's entire family is dead. No one is here to settle scores now." The third son, Gu Dahu, glanced at him. He lowered his head and said softly, "You can't say that." That woman was shouting in front of the entire village. Even if eldest brother's family is no longer around, we can't pretend that what second sister-in-law did never happened. What if the villagers point fingers at us in the future? Can our Gu family's daughters get married in the future? Madame Zhao originally did not think that it was a big deal. In her opinion, even if Madame Yang died, it would be her life. However, when she heard her third son's words, she was instantly furious. She stood up and rushed towards Madame Jia, hitting her in the face. "You troublemaker, how can you be so capable? You even dare to throw a stone at someone. You're too vicious. It's not enough that you harmed yourself, but you also dare to implicate us." Gu Dai glared at his third brother and went up to stop Madame Zhao. "Mother, stop. What's done is done. What do you want?" Madame Zhao was accidentally pushed by him and took 2 steps back. Madame Chang happened to support her. "Mother, be careful." She lowered her voice. "Don't anger second sister-in-law." She was unhappy when Sienna was sold. When Madame Zhao heard this, she suddenly shivered. What did she mean? Could it be that Madame Jia dared to kill her? Chapter 328. Old Gu was beaten up. Madame Jia suddenly raised her head and glared fiercely at Madame Chang. Suddenly she rushed over, grabbed Madame Chang's hair, and gave her 2 tight slaps. Madame Chang was caught off guard and fell. Gu Dahu reacted quickly and went forward to pull Madame Jia up and push her to the side. "Second sister-in-law, what are you doing? You hit eldest sister-in-law and now you want to hit your third sister-in-law. It seems that none of your sisters-in-law will have a good ending, right?" "Pfft, what kind of sister-in-law is she?" Madame Jia sneered. She couldn't care less and pointed at Madame Chang. "Why did I hit eldest sister-in-law? You should ask your wife properly. If she hadn't said in front of me that eldest sister-in-law secretly seduced my Dai, would I have gone to settle scores with her?" Updated on B0xN0. Madame Chang trembled in Gu Dahu's arms. She sobbed and retorted, "Second sister-in-law, don't talk nonsense. When did I say that? Eldest sister-in-law had a man. Why would she seduce second uncle? You still dare to deny it? You still dare to deny it?" Madame Jia wanted to rush up and hit her again. "You said that eldest uncle is not mother's biological son, and father doesn't treat him well, so eldest sister-in-law's life is the most difficult. So in order to live a good life, eldest sister-in-law wants to secretly hook up with our Dai. Did you say that? Is that right?" Madame Chang shook her head vigorously. "I didn't. I really didn't say anything. You slut, I knew that you two were bad people. When eldest uncle was around, you guys abused them. Now that they're not around, you're here to deal with us, right? When Sienna was sold, it was you, slut, who sowed discord. All right, your daughter was saved, but you want my daughter to go out and suffer as a servant. I've long wanted to beat you to death." Gu Dahu said angrily, "Second sister-in-law, are you crazy? You're biting people everywhere. You two are not good people. Ever since you came back, you've been using Sienna as an excuse and don't do anything. Father and mother feel guilty and let you lie at home like corpses every day. Now, you've done something wrong and let the entire village know that our family has a vicious woman. How dare you blame my wife here?" As soon as Gu Dahu got involved, Gu Dai naturally had to protect Madame Jia. The two families were arguing fiercely. The children on both sides were also secretly competing. The entire main house was like a market, revealing all their shortcomings. In the past, with Gu Dajiang around, the second and third sons had the same parents. Naturally, they were on the same side and didn't get along with Gu Dajiang. Now that Gu Dajiang's family was gone, only the two families lived under the same roof. However, Gu Dai and his wife were lazy. When they were working, they would slack off if they could. The third branch had long lost their patience. Now that they had finally found Gu Da's fault, they naturally had to make use of it. If they could poke someone's wound, they would poke it. It was best to take the opportunity to split up the family and let the two lazy people from the second branch fend for themselves. Madame Zhao was stunned. So her two daughters-in-law had actually done so much behind her back? She looked at old Gu, who also had a sullen face. His two sons, whom he doted on the most, had actually hated each other to this extent. His head hurt from the noise. He closed his eyes for a long time before slamming the table. "Shut up, all of you." No one listened to him. The two sides were in a heated argument and even started fighting. It was not known who was careless, but one of their fists missed and knocked old Gu, who was walking over angrily, to the ground. Madame Zhao screamed, "Old man!" The quarreling in the main room finally stopped. Chapter 329. Go, who was under the window, heard what happened and cursed in his heart. He deserved it. Dr. Gu was sent to the bed. Madame Jia immediately said, "I'll go find a doctor." After saying that, she ran out. Her positive attitude made Go feel that something was wrong. After hesitating for a moment, Go followed her silently. Madame Jia was not on the way to call a doctor. She secretly ran to the foot of a mountain and looked around. When she did not see anyone, she quickly squatted under a tree and dug. Updated on B0X and Zulu. Not long after, a stone was dug out. Go quickly guessed that this stone should be the one that hit Madame Yang's head. Madame Jia hugged the stone and looked around. Go hurriedly hid his body. She quickly filled in the hole she had dug and stepped on it forcefully. Then she took the stone and left. She originally wanted to throw it into the river, but now that the riverside was filled with women washing clothes, she could only find a random place to throw it away. Anyway, Madame Hu only said that she saw the place where the stone was buried. Now that there were no more stones in that place, what else could she say? Only then did Madame Jia hurriedly run to find a doctor. Go waited for her to leave before he went over to pick up the stone. The stone was not big, and it had been a few years. There were no traces left on it. However, Go still tore off a piece of his sleeve and carefully wrapped the stone. Seeing that it was getting late, he hurriedly returned to Jiangyu County. Gu Yundong was sitting in the room and listening to Madame Yang humming a tune. Bien Yuanji had just fallen asleep. He didn't seem to be sleeping well. His brows were tightly knitted. It wasn't until Madame Yang hummed older Aunt Gus' tune that he slowly fell asleep. Gu Yundong tilted her head and looked at Madame Yang's confused eyes. If she returned to normal in the future and recalled the humiliations she had suffered in the past, would she be very sad and painful? However, she could not let her remain foolish forever. This was unfair to Madame Yang. When she had the chance, she would ask Dr. Song if Madame Yang could forget this unhappy memory after she was cured. Just as she was engrossed in her thoughts, there was a soft knock on the door. Gu Yundong stood up and said to Madame Yang, "Mother, Yunji is asleep. You should rest too." "I'm not tired." Madame Yang actually enjoyed this state. Deep down, she still wanted to take care of others. Previously, on the way to escape, she had been feeding and dressing the two children with Gu Yunka on her back. This seemed to have become her boldest memory. It was just that she had been out with Gu Yundong during this period of time and did not have Ah Shu and Kiki by her side to take care of. Dong Dong did everything by herself, so Madame Yang was a little perturbed. Sometimes, there was a panic in the depths of her heart that she was not needed. Now that Bien Yuanji was here, she was much calmer. Actually, Gu Yundong had long noticed her state, but she could not think of a solution for the time being. After all, she really did not need her mother to dress and wash her face. Pursing her lips, she opened the door and went out. Gu Yundong guessed that Go had returned. Sure enough, when she went to Xiao Qingyuan's room, she saw Go sitting on a stool with a serious expression. In front of him was a stone covered in mud. Seeing Gu Yundong enter, Go immediately stood up. "Mississippi." Gu Yundong's gaze fell on the stone and he quickly guessed its origin. Go looked at her worriedly. He glanced at Xiao Qingyuan, who was also silent. No one knew what he was thinking. Gu Yundong had already walked to the stool and sat down. "Speak." Chapter 331:1 Can do anything. Wasn't this the person who gave him the white steamed bun? Bien Yung blinked. So, did his cousin send this guy over? What about the one from the day before? Was it also his cousin's doing? His eyes suddenly curved into crescents, and he smiled happily. Xiao Qingyuan noticed his gaze and couldn't help but look at him. Updated on B0X and 0. Bien Yung hurriedly lowered his head and ate obediently. However, from the corner of his eye, he saw Xiao Qingyuan scooping porridge for Gu Yundong. He could not help but think to himself that this was his cousin-in-law. She looked better than his ex-brother-in-law. She would definitely be happy in the future. Definitely. After everyone at the table finished eating in silence, Xiao Qingyuan said, "Someone will come over later." Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. Xiao Qingyuan looked at the time and walked to the windowsill. He lowered his eyes and looked at the people coming and going below. After a while, a familiar-looking woman walked over and raised her head to look over. When she saw Xiao Qingyuan, she quickly lowered her head. This person was Gu Gang's concubine, Madame Shen. Madame Shen was holding a basket in her hand and there was a woman beside her. She did not notice Madame Shen's abnormality and was bargaining with the vegetable seller by the roadside. Seeing that the discussion was intense, Madame Shen suddenly said in a low voice, "I'm a little unwell. I'll go to the inn opposite to borrow the outhouse. If you've bought the vegetables, wait for me under the willow by the river." The woman frowned. She wanted to say that she was lazy and had a lot of feces and urine, but she still forced a smile. "Alright, go ahead. But you have to give me the money for the groceries." Madame Shen gave her the money and the basket. She hurriedly turned around and entered the inn. The woman pursed her lips, but she was a little happier when she saw the money in her hand. She worked even harder to argue with the vegetable seller. If she could get the price lower by 1 copper coin, she would be able to keep 1 more copper coin. Madame Shen entered the inn and looked at the second floor. When she saw Xiao Qingyuan, she hurriedly came up. After entering, she saw Gu Yundong, Madame Yang, and Bien Yung. Bien Yung also saw her. Of course, he recognized this person. In the past, when Madame Shen pitied him, she would occasionally give him some food. Bien Yung had a good impression of her and would not call her a vixen behind her back like the other children in the village did. Madame Shen was slightly surprised to see Bien Yung, who had changed completely. She smiled and nodded at him before looking at Gu Yundong. "You must be Miss Gu." "Miss Shen," Gu Yundong said with a smile. When Madame Shen heard her address, she was still in a daze. Ever since she became Gu Gang's concubine, she had heard many vicious and unpleasant titles. The best was Madame Shen. It had been a long time since anyone called her Miss Shen. Madame Shen was a little moved. She secretly took a deep breath and said, "I don't have much time. I'll make it short. Let's go to the room next door." Gu Yundong asked Madame Yang to teach Bien Yung to solve the puzzle, and the 3 of them went to Xiao Qingyuan's room. Originally, Xiao Qingyuan could have gone to the Gu village to look for Madame Shen. However, Gu Gang's wife kept a close eye on her and was especially keen to find trouble with her. Just 2 days ago, when Xiao Qingyuan went to look for her, he was almost seen by that woman. Madame Shen took the opportunity to go out. She even brought Gu Gang's daughter-in-law, Madame Yu, with her. Since ancient times, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law had always been difficult to get along. Madame Yu and her mother-in-law had always been at odds. Now that she had Madame Shen as her second mother-in-law, wouldn't she be close to her so that they could deal with the mother-in-law together? After the 3 of them sat down, Madame Shen asked, "What do you want me to do?" "What can you do?" Madame Shen sneered. "As long as Gu Gang receives retribution, I can do anything." Chapter 332. Shen's hatred. Shen was indeed saved by Gu Gang's grandson, Gu Wanbao. She was originally a girl from a small town, the only daughter of her parents. Her family background was not bad. When she grew up, her parents wanted to find a son-in-law for her, but the conditions of a live-in son-in-law were not particularly good. After some selection, she was already 17 or 18 years old. Then, the Shen family left Yongning Prefecture because of the famine. Unfortunately, the Shen family's parents were gone. Only Madame Shen was barely alive. She had promised her parents that she would take care of herself and save her life. Therefore, when Gu Wanbao saved her, she was sincerely grateful. Updated on B0X and 0. Even though the rest of the Gu family looked at her sloppy appearance with disdain, even though she knew that the Gu family was not a good family, even though after she washed her face, the 3 males of the Gu family looked at her strangely, Madame Shen was already prepared to be a slave. They had saved her life, so it was not too much to be a slave. However, this did not include the fact that Gu Gang had forcibly defiled her when she was completely unwilling. The pain from that day was still unforgettable and heart-wrenching. There were no good people in old Gu's family. None of them were innocent. This included Gu Wanbao and Madame Yu, who had sent her to Gu Gang's bed. She was the woman who had been bargaining with the vegetable seller. Madame Yu was Gu Wanbao's mother, so she didn't like Madame Shen. Not only did Madame Shen have no one to rely on, but even her man had to peek at this woman from time to time. Coupled with the fact that Gu Wanbao was liking her more and more, Madame Yu was a little anxious. Perhaps because she had been the village chief's daughter-in-law for a long time and felt that her family was superior to others, Gu Wanbao had to marry a girl from the county. Therefore, Madame Yu found an opportunity and secretly sent Madame Shen to her father-in-law's bed. This way, Gu Wanbao would not marry this woman, her own man would not dare to look at this woman, and she would be able to disgust her annoying mother-in-law. Everyone would be happy. Only Madame Shen was almost sent to hell. Gu Wanbao, on the other hand, was dissatisfied and wanted to make a fuss. After being threatened and tempted by Gu Gang, he stopped. However, Madame Shen knew that the way Gu Wanbao looked at her was even more unscrupulous and dirty than before, as if she was just an unpresentable thing. Sometimes, she even thought of buying a bag of arsenic and poisoning everyone in old Gu's family to death. However, she had promised her parents that she would live well. Hence, she was waiting for an opportunity. Now, this opportunity had arrived. Madame Shen looked at Xiao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong with a hint of madness in her eyes. I just want to keep my life. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Then let Gu Gang and Gu Wanbao fight, Xiao Qingyuan said. Madame Shen was stunned. Let Gu Gang and Gu Wanbao go against each other? Gu Wanbao was actually a coward. When facing Gu Gang, he could only retreat. If they were to fight, he would have to be forced into a corner. Xiao Qingyuan said, although Gu Wanbao is timid, he grew up under Gu Gang's dominance. There are some things that he doesn't dare to say. Didn't Gu Gang find a marriage for him? Let Gu Gang ruin this marriage. Gu Wanbao. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Madame Shen. There's no need to say anything else. I have an idea. Xiao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong looked at each other. Seeing the determination in Madame Shen's eyes, they did not say anything else. If you need help, you can look for Ah Shu and the others. You've seen them before. Alright, I'll go back first. Madame Shen stood up and turned to leave the inn. Gu Yundong looked at her back and frowned slightly. Why do I feel that her thoughts are a little dangerous? Xiao Qingyuan had this feeling in his heart too. Chapter 333. Something happened to the old Gu family. Madame Shen returned to Madame Yu's side and smiled again. Madame Yu complained impatiently, what took you so long? I've been standing here for a while. I had no choice. My stomach suddenly felt uncomfortable. I really don't know if I ate something wrong. Madame Shen sighed and frowned slightly. She looked a little haggard. Madame Yu immediately exclaimed, the food this morning was made by mother-in-law. Could it be that she wanted to say something but hesitated as if she was concerned. Seeing Madame Shen's expression suddenly darken, she immediately felt happy. She loved watching these two mother-in-laws fight. Because Madame Shen was not feeling well, the two of them sped up. After hurriedly buying things, they took the ox cart back. In the end, just as they got off the ox cart at the village, they suddenly saw the doctor in town running in hurriedly. The person leading the way was actually Gu Dai. Beside them, the women in the village were discussing mysteriously. Madame Yu was a person who liked to join in the fun. She quickly ran over and asked around. The woman immediately said, something happened to Gu Dai's wife. This morning, When she carried her clothes to the river to wash them, she was suddenly knocked on the head and fell into the river. Ah! Madame Yu was surprised. Is that person still alive? She's alive. Someone downstream saw her fall into the river and quickly saved her. Speaking of which, it's strange. That person only saw Jia Meizi fall into the river, but he didn't see anyone push her down. Isn't this situation exactly the same as when Gu Dajiang's wife fell into the river? Do you think Gu Dajiang's wife came back to take revenge? The person who spoke at the end lowered his voice, carrying a strange aura. When others heard this, they could not help but shiver. Don't spout nonsense. If Gu Dajiang's wife wants revenge, why didn't she come over earlier? She didn't know who hit her head. If it weren't for the Ding family's wife yesterday, who would know? That's true. Why don't we go to old Gus' house to take a look and ask if that's true? The people gathered here were all gossipy. They were very curious. As soon as someone said this, although they were also a little afraid that Madame Yang's ghost would not disperse, there were many people and it was broad daylight, so there was nothing to be afraid of. MDMU was also curious and wanted to take a look, so she went over and said to MDM Shen, "If you're not feeling well, go back quickly. Bring everything home first. I'll take a look at old Gus' house too. I'll tell you when I come back." After saying that, she stuffed the basket in her hand into Madame Shen's hand. "Alright, I'll go back first." Before MDM Shen could finish speaking, MDMU impatiently followed the others towards old Gus' house. MDM Shen pursed her lips and returned to the Gu residence. At this moment, the Gu residence was exceptionally deserted. The courtyard door was not locked, but there seemed to be no one around. MDM Shen put down her things and looked around. She realized that only Gu Wanbao was sleeping on the bed. The others might have gone to old Gus' house? MDM Shen's eyes flickered slightly. She walked into the courtyard and deliberately made a loud sound. Bang! It immediately spread into the room. Gu Wanbao jolted and sat up on the bed. Frowning, he rubbed his eyes and looked out sleepily. Just as he was about to curse, he suddenly heard a low cry. Chapter 334. You're my darling. Gu Wanbao was stunned. He immediately got off the bed and looked in the direction of the voice. He saw MDM Shen sitting in the central room with her head lowered, wiping her tears. That low sobbing voice was actually indescribably melodious and pleasing to the ear. Gu Wanbao could not help but feel an itch in his heart. He looked around and saw that there was no one around, so he quietly approached her. "Why are you crying?" MDM Shen seemed to be shocked. She suddenly looked up with tears in the corners of her eyes. Why are you home?" She quickly wiped her tears and turned her back to him. "I just came back from work and I'm tired. I'm resting in my room." In fact, he had been fooling around outside for the entire night and had only returned in the morning. After all, he was going to get married soon. At that time, it would be inconvenient for him to do anything with a wife at home. Of course, he had to go out and have a good time before he got married. He asked again, "Why are you crying?" MDM Shen shook her head. "It has nothing to do with you." "How so? We're family now. Tell me quickly, who bullied you?" MDM Shen sneered. "What family? Who's your family? You're getting married soon. When the time comes, your family will be another woman. What am I?" As she spoke, she started crying again. She was even sadder than before. Gu Wanbao was stunned for a moment. He carefully thought about what she meant and his eyes lit up. He smiled casually. You can't bear to leave me?" MDM Shen did not speak and only lowered her head to hide her tears. Wasn't her silence a tacit agreement? Gu Wanbao's vanity was greatly satisfied. He leaned forward. "Tell me, did you miss me?" MDM Shen seemed to be annoyed by his interrogation. She suddenly turned around and pushed him. "So what if I did? You're going to marry someone else. I'm already your grandmother." Gu Wanbao laughed. "What grandmother? Is there a grandma as young as you? You're my darling. I really cherish you." I can't tell." She looked as if she didn't believe him, but the corners of her mouth curled up uncontrollably. Gu Wanbao looked at her seriously. "Don't be sad. My heart is filled with you. You ignored me a while ago. Were you angry with me? Now that you see that I'm getting married, you're nervous? Nervous about what? Why should I care? You don't mean what you say. I'm just. Before MDM Shen could finish speaking, footsteps came from outside. I'll hide first. Gu Wanbao quickly turned around and returned to his room. Madame Shen looked at his back and snorted. The next moment, Gu Gang's wife, Madame Wang, strode in. When she saw Madame Shen, she scolded her, "How long have you been here? Don't you have to work? If everyone is waiting for you to cook, won't we starve to death?" Gu Wanbao walked out with sleepy eyes. "Grandma, why are you shouting? You woke me up." Madame Wang's expression changed. She quickly went forward and said, "Wanbao, you're here. I'm sorry, I didn't notice. I won't be noisy anymore. Why don't you sleep for a while more?" "I'm already awake. Why should I sleep?" He looked around. "Where are my parents and the others?" "They're all at Gu Chuanzong's house. His family has the most trouble." Madame Wang was originally watching the commotion, but when she saw her daughter-in-law, Madame Yu, go over, she found out that they had returned from the county city and hurriedly ran back to find trouble with Madame Shen. Gu Wanba's interest was piqued. What happened to that family? It said that they encountered a ghost. It's broad daylight. Where did the ghost come from? Then I'll go take a look too. Gu Wanbao ran out. When he arrived at Old Gus' house, he saw that it was indeed surrounded by people. When he finally squeezed in, he heard his grandfather talking. Chapter 335. Scared to death, why doesn't your family ever stop? Previously, Bian Yuanji attracted a county magistrate. 2 days ago, the Ding family's wife came to cause trouble. Today, you said that your wife encountered a ghost. Can't you live a good life? Gu Gang was very impatient. He lectured Gu Chuanzong like a grandson. Gu Wanbao listened with great interest outside. However, he was curious about what Gu Da's wife looked like after she encountered a ghost. Hence, he quietly blended into the crowd and walked towards Gu Da's room. There were a lot of people surrounding Gu Da's room and they couldn't be chased away. Everyone wanted to hear what the doctor had to say. The old doctor only took her pulse slightly and said, "She's fine. She was just shocked. She just needs to rest well." "But doctor, there's a big bump on the back of my wife's head. How can she be fine?" Update on Biomicron X0vil. Sumicronim. The old doctor glanced at Gu Day. "You said it's a big bump yourself. It will disappear after a while. What's the hurry?" Gu Day wanted to say something, but the old doctor had already left impatiently. As soon as he left, the others immediately asked, "Da's wife, what happened? Did you see anyone smash your head? Did you really encounter a ghost?" Jia Meizi, who had already woken up, could not help but shiver. She did not know who hit her on the head, but she knew that she was not by the river when she fainted. When she was at the foot of the mountain, she felt a pain in her head and fainted. However, the women who had saved her just now said that when they saw her, she was standing by the river upstream. They called her a few times, but she did not respond. Instead, she fell straight into the river. And there was no one beside her. She looked as if she had been possessed by a ghost. Without needing anyone to remind her, Jia Meizi almost immediately thought of Madame Yang. Wasn't it exactly the same when she pushed Madame Yang into the river? But the problem was that when she pushed Madame Yang, she happened to be at the corner of the river. At that time, a big rock blocked her figure. Therefore, no one could see if Madame Yang had fallen accidentally or been pushed down. However, no one had expected someone to be so vicious as to kill someone. Therefore, when Gu Dajiang asked, the women by the river said that she had slipped and fallen into the river and hit her head. As it happened, Madame Yang had become stupid, so she naturally could not defend herself. However, Madame Jia was different. There were no obstacles around the place where she fell into the water. Everyone could clearly see that she was standing alone by the river with her body leaning forward. At that time, a woman called out to her. Then she fell. Jia Meizi was still afraid when she thought about it. Chapter 336, Hiding Merit and Fang Gu Dahu suddenly stopped in his tracks and pulled Madame Chang back. He pressed his lips together and shushed her. Soon, the discussion gradually became clearer. Gu Da's wife must have suffered retribution. Madame Yang must have come back to take revenge on her. Who asked her to be so vicious and evil? Do you think Gu Dai will also suffer retribution? Gu Dai didn't break his sister-in-law's head and push her into the river, right? Otherwise, why was Jia Meizi the only one who got into trouble today? Heh, you don't know about this, right? Another person said mysteriously. Let me tell you. Gu Dai was drunk some time ago and personally said that on the way to Qingan Prefecture, he knocked his niece's head and even snatched a tael of silver. I heard that his niece was already half dead at that time. Do you think she died because he knocked her? Update on Biomicron X0ville. Simicron? Oh? There's such a thing? That's why I wondered if his niece would seek revenge on Gu Dai. The two of them chatted for a while before suddenly getting up and leaving. Gu Dahu stood where he was, deep in thought. On the other hand, Madame Chang hurriedly walked around to look at the two people who were talking. Unfortunately, she could only see the backs of the two men. They were wearing the clothes of ordinary villagers. She did not know who they were. When she returned, she saw Gu Dahu's eyes shining. He pulled her back to the room and whispered, I have an idea. Do you want to hear it? What is it? Second sister-in-law has harmed eldest sister-in-law. Isn't there a retribution now? Then second brother has harmed Yundong. Shouldn't he pay the price too? Madame Chang was stunned. Gu Dahu cackled. Second brother wanted Yundong's life. Of course, he could not take second brother's life, but second brother's silver. The couple lowered their heads and began to discuss in detail. On the other side, Go and Zhu, who had been hiding, covered their mouths and laughed softly. It's about time. Let's go back today. Sure thing. The two of them left Gu village silently. Because of the Gu village was the combination of two villages, the other village had few people and was poor. After they returned from the wilderness, some houses could not be lived in, so some people moved to the empty houses in Gu village. Therefore, there were always strangers coming in and out of this place, so the two of them were not so conspicuous. The two of them returned to Jiangyu County and entered the inn. In the end, they only saw Mao waiting for them alone. Mao and Shu woke up early to look at the houses in the county city. After all, they could not leave for the time being, and it was inconvenient to stay in the inn all the time. After looking around, they all moved over, leaving only Mao here to bring them to the place. The new courtyard was a little remote. They wouldn't be staying there for long anyway. Go was a little excited when he went in. After sitting down, he could not wait to tell them what had happened in Gu village. That Jia Meizi really thought that she was possessed by a ghost. She was so frightened that her face turned pale. I'm dying of laughter. Actually, Go had indeed knocked her out and moved her to the river with Zhu. They originally wanted to move her to the place where Madame Yang had fallen into the water. There were large rocks there that could block people, and the same place looked more realistic. However, there was someone there. After Go and Zhu discussed, they found another place. At that time, Jia Meizi was tied to a rope, and the other end of the rope was pulled by Zhu, who hid in a tree. Chapter 337. It must be Gu Yundong. Go went into the water and stuck his head out. He grabbed Madame Jia's feet and held them in place. From afar, it was like Madame Jia was standing facing the river, her body leaning forward as if she was about to fall. However, they could not see Go in the water. When they called out to Madame Jia, Go untied the rope on her body and Madame Jia fell into the river. In order not to kill anyone, Go even put her head aside. Then he swam to the other side and immediately changed his clothes when he got ashore. Fortunately, the weather was gradually getting warmer. Although it was still a little cold, Go felt fearless. Even so, Gu Yundong still made him drink a large bowl of ginger tea to get rid of the cold. Update on Biomicron X0ville. Omicron, Gu Dahu and his wife should have fallen for it too. Speaking of this, everyone could not help but feel excited. Mao said, We should go to Gu village tomorrow. The next day, Shu went to Gu village with the excuse of settling down. They pretended to be dissatisfied with other places and had no choice but to run back to Gu village. On the other hand, Gu Gang became even more smug and arrogant. Shu said that he wanted to walk around the village first. When Gu Gang saw that there was a chance, he immediately brought him along. They walked to the entrance of old Gus's house. Then, they heard a commotion coming from inside. "Father, there was a thief in our house. I don't have any money left in my room." The smile on Gu Gang's face suddenly fell, and he gritted his teeth in anger. Shu looked inside curiously. Gu Da's loud shout had called the whole family over. When Madame Zhao heard that her house had been robbed, she immediately turned around and returned to her room. She looked at her money bag and heaved a sigh of relief. However, her expression immediately turned ugly. She came out and asked him, "You saved money? How much did you save? Was it your wife who urged you?" "Mother, why are you still talking about this at a time like this? Our house has been robbed." "Madame Zhao, robbed? Then why didn't I lose anything in my room?" "I didn't lose anything in my room either. Even the copper coin that Mother gave our bower yesterday is on the table." "It's still there," Madame Chang added. Gu Dai was stunned. What did she mean? Was he the only one who lost money in his room? Gu Da suddenly seemed to have thought of something and exclaimed, "Second brother, don't tell me it was also taken by a ghost? It even specially took your silver." "What did you say?" Gu Dai glared at him fiercely. Gu Da quickly took a step back. Why is second brother so angry? Could it be that second brother has forgotten that he snatched Yundong's money on the way to escape? "Look, she came back to take revenge on you." Otherwise, while second sister-in-law is still recuperating in her room, who would dare to go in and steal? When everyone heard this, their expressions instantly changed. It would have been fine if Jia Meizi had encountered such a strange thing alone, but now, even Gu Dai had encountered it? Well, Gu Dai felt as if his throat was choked and he could not say a word. Shu, who was outside the door, clicked his tongue. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Gu Gang's face. They're all talking nonsense. There's something wrong with the brains of everyone in old Gus family. Shu didn't say anything and turned around to go back. When they returned to Gu Gang's house, Gu Gang started to talk about the price again, but Shu did not say a word. The central room was silent for a moment. On the other hand, Mao sauntered out again. When no one was around, he walked to the kitchen. Seeing that Madame Shen was alone, he quickly went in and said, "Miss Shen, my lady asked me to tell you something." Chapter 338. Something happened to old Gu again. Madame Shen looked out. Madame Wang had gone to the toilet and was not back yet. She took a step forward and asked, "What is it?" Mao said, "My lady said that there are many ways to take revenge. If this path doesn't work, well, find another one. However, it's not worth it to sacrifice yourself for revenge." When Madame Shen heard this, she was stunned. Did that Miss Gu guess something? She pursed her lips and looked up to say something, but Mao had already left. Update on Biomicron X0ville. Sumicron MDM Shen secretly pinched her fingers. Another way? Of course she knew there were other ways, but she didn't want to wait any longer. She would not throw herself in. "Why are you standing at the door? Did you do something wrong? Did you secretly eat something?" Madame Wang's voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Madame Shen was pushed by her and instantly lowered her eyes to hide the disgust in the corners of her eyes. She did not say a word. However, Madame Wang refused to give up. "Why are you acting like this again? All right, there's a piece of meat missing. You must have eaten it secretly. I knew that you're not a good person. I was only gone for a while. Your hands and feet are dirty, right? I was wondering why you spent so much money when you went to the county city to buy things yesterday. Were you the one who kept some of the money?" Her cursing continued. Gu Gang finally couldn't help but walk over and slap her. "Can you stop? The guests have been scared away. Do you think everyone is as petty and stingy as you?" Madame Wang screamed, "You hit me again?" She pounced on him and scratched him with her nails. Madame Shen silently retreated to a corner and watched them fight to the death. On the other side, Shu had also returned. However, he told Gu Gang that he had to consider it carefully and would come back another day. The next day, Go and Zhu came over. Then, something happened to old Gus family again. It was said that when Madame Jia came out of the outhouse in the morning, she saw the youngest son of the third branch take out a stone from Gu Dahu and his wife's room and plan to throw it away. Then, she recognized that it was the stone that she had dug out from the ground and thrown away. Jia Meizi exploded on the spot. She snatched the stone and beat the child until he almost vomited blood. Hence, the two branches started fighting again. Madame Jia insisted that it was Gu Dahu and his wife who had smashed her head, not Madame Yang's ghost at all. Of course, Gu Dahu and his wife did not admit it. They felt that Madame Jia was deliberately slandering them because the second branch had lost money and wanted to extort a sum from them. Old Gu and Madame Zhao were in a terrible fix. Not to mention stopping the fight, they were even injured. The villagers were all watching the commotion. Only then did they realize that Madame Chang, who looked soft and weak, actually had extraordinary combat strength. She pressed Madame Jia down and beat her up until she cried like a ghost. On the third day, Mao and Shu came again, so something happened to old Gus family again. The two branches of old Gus family wanted to split up, but old Gu refused. Madame Zhao said that they wanted to follow third brother. This was because she knew that her second son and wife were lazy and greedy. Moreover, she had sold Gu Xiener previously. Madame Jia must have a grudge against them. Gu Dai did not want to take care of this couple either, so he agreed readily. However, the condition was that they had to share more of the family assets as compensation for Gu Xiener. Madame Zhao said that she did not have money. When no one was paying attention, Gu Feier secretly ran to the third branch's room to search for silver. He actually found 8 taels of silver. The Gu family was stunned, and Madame Zhao was even more dumbfounded. She had only saved 15 taels of silver for so many years. Chapter 339. The end of the old Gu family. Gu Dai leaned over to take a look and realized that one of the pieces of silver looked very familiar. When he took a closer look, he immediately recognized it. Wasn't this his? He remembered that when he went to exchange for copper coins, the silver fragments were in this shape. At that time, he even joked that the silver fragment was twisted too uniquely, and the two gaps were a little symmetrical. Gu Dai rushed up on the spot and hit Gu Da. He scolded him for being a thief and wanted to send him to the officials. He scolded his brother's wife for being a murderer and trying to murder Madame Jia. The two branches started fighting again. This time, even the children were involved. Old Gu shouted at the top of his lungs. No one listened to him at all. Madame Zhao cried even louder. Many things in her house had been smashed. On the fourth day, Go and Zhu came again. Then, something happened to old Gus family again. The 5th day, the 6th day, the 7th day, on the 8th day, old Gus family's two branches had already reached a point where they could not get along. The villagers seemed to be watching the show every day. Gu Gang wanted to interfere, but he realized that Gu Wanbao had been making things difficult for him recently. The two of them had quarreled several times, and he had even said that he did not want to get married. The rumors had even reached the ears of his future in-laws. Gu Gang was already in a terrible fix over his own family's matters, so how could he have the time to pay attention to old Gus family's situation? By the time he came back to his senses, something had already happened to old Gus family. It was said that Jia Meizi had suffered too much during this period of time. It was mainly because they were at a disadvantage every time they fought with the third branch. The third branch's couple were good at secretly scamming people. Others did not expect their martial arts to be so strong. If they fought, the second branch would always lose. Update on Biomicron x Zeroville. Semicronim that day, when Jia Meizi saw the eldest daughter of the third branch, anger surged. She thought about how her Xiener's life was still unknown and how she worked like a slave for others. How could the daughter of the third branch enjoy life at home? At that time, her eyes were bloodshot. She stuffed the 12-year-old girl's mouth and put her into a sack and brought her to the county city. On the way, someone saw that something was wrong with her and noticed that Madame Chang was looking for someone. They roughly guessed it and told Madame Chang. Madame Chang rushed to the county city in a hurry and happened to see Madame Jia planning to sell her daughter to a brothel. Her eyes were about to split open as she went up and started fighting. It was true that Madame Jia could not defeat her, but Madame Chang had to protect her daughter, so she was at a disadvantage. Unexpectedly, Madame Jia took the opportunity to tear off her clothes and expose most of her body in public. Who were the people in the brothel? They were all despicable men. Madame Chang was stunned and her mind went blank. In the end, it was her daughter who escorted her back. After Madame Chang returned, there was something wrong with her and she was in a daze. The doctor said that her brain had been hurt and was afraid that she would be like this in the future. However, Madame Zhao even said that she was embarrassing and wanted Gu Dahu to divorce Madame Chang. Gu Dahu was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He pushed Madame Zhao and almost made her fall. He rushed into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and ran to the second branch's room. Madame Jia was trembling in fear. Gu Dai naturally went to stop her, and the knife slashed his wrist. The tendons in Gu Da's hand were broken, and his right hand was completely crippled. However, Gu Dahu did not give up. He steeled his heart and cut off the tendons in Gu Da's left hand. Old Gu's house was covered in blood. When Old Gu and Madame Zhao rushed in, they saw Gu Dai lying in a pool of blood with a scream. Madame Jia was knocking Gu Dai away. Then she picked up the knife that he had dropped on the ground and slashed his leg. Old Gu collapsed to the ground. The last thought in his mind was, if I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have sharpened the knife yesterday. Chapter 340. The godlike Gu Yundong. The villagers were shocked by such a huge incident. Madame Chang went crazy. Gu Da's hands were crippled and Gu Dahu broke his leg. Madame Zhao wanted to sink Madame Jia into the pond. When Gu Gang heard this, he almost fainted. By the time he arrived at the Gu residence, the entire courtyard was filled with tragic cries. The villagers hired 2 doctors, but their medical skills were not very good. They could only stop the bleeding and save their lives. As for curing them, that would be too difficult for the doctors. Gu Gang went to look for Old Gu. The latter sat weakly in Gu Dahu's room with his back hunched. It was as if a lot of white hair had grown out of his head in an instant. His vitality had been sucked out of him, as if he had aged many years. Madame Zhao was in Gu Da's room. She got someone to grab Madame Jia and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Get rid of her and sink her into the pond." It was all this scourge's fault. All her fault. If it weren't for her, Madame Chang wouldn't have gone crazy, and third son wouldn't have been so angry that he cut off second brother's tendons. In the end, Madame Jia even cut off third brother's legs. Their 2 strong laborers, her 2 sons, were ruined. Destroyed. You're a jinx. Since you married into our family has never lived a good life. Well, sink her into the pond. Her screams could be heard clearly by everyone outside, including Old Gu and Gu Gang. Update on Biomicron X Zeroville. Omicronim. Gu Gang frowned and asked him, "What do you think?" Old Gu wiped his face and looked at his third son on the bed, then at Madame Chang, who was sitting at the head of the bed in a daze. In the end, he thought of his second son who was also lying down and sighed heavily. Karma. It's all karma. As he spoke, he got up and bent down to go to the second branch's room. He said to Madame Zhao, whose eyes were still fierce, "Let second daughter-in-law stay." Madame Zhao turned to look at him in disbelief. Old Gu said, "Second brother is already like this. Someone has to take care of him." "I can take care of him." "What about third son?" Madame Zhao opened her mouth. Thinking of Madame Chang's appearance, she probably could not rely on her. She could only do it herself. Old Gu continued, "Besides, if you sink her into the pond, who will do all the work in our family? Or are you going to arrange another wife for second brother? But our family spent most of our money on the treatment just now. Besides, look at second son. No one is willing to marry him again." "But," Old Gu said in a low voice, "at most, you can just torture her in the future. Let this matter go. Don't make a fuss. Our family is already like this, what are you still making a fuss for? Let's not talk about anything else." For the sake of your eldest grandson, you can't sink her into the pond. Otherwise, what if your eldest grandson wants to get married in the future? After Madame Zhao heard this, she looked at Madame Jia with a vicious gaze. Madame Jia was also afraid now. At that time, she was just hot-headed. She did not expect things to develop to this extent. Now, as long as they did not let her sink into the pond, she would do anything. Now that things had come to this, old Gus' words made sense. In addition, his eldest grandson was still pleading on the side. Madame Zhao could only give in. However, Madame Jia's life would be difficult in the future. Therefore, old Gus' family has suffered heavy losses this time. When Ah Go and the others reported the situation to Gu Yundong, they were extremely excited. Miss Gus' foresight was godlike. She was too smart. Look at how she had tormented old Gus' family. Gu Yundong knew that old Gus' family would not have a good ending. After all, she knew the weaknesses of that family too well. They were all selfish. What she cared more about now was, what about Miss Shen? Chapter 341. You adulterous couple. At the mention of the Shen family, Ah Shu and Ah Mao looked at each other. Of course, they already knew how Madame Shen planned to deal with Gu Gang. Although they felt that it was not worth it, there was nothing they could do since Madame Shen insisted on doing so. Ah Shu said, Miss Shen asked me to help her tomorrow. She should be preparing to reel in the net. Gu Yundong nodded. Go there early tomorrow. The next day, Ah Shu went to Gu Village again. Recently, Gu Gang had been very frustrated. Gu Village was not peaceful because so many things had happened to old Gus' family. Ah Shu, whom he had always thought could extort more money from, always said that he would consider whether or not to settle down here. Every time he thought there was hope, something would happen to old Gus' family. Then Ah Shu would go back. This dragged on day after day. Therefore, Gu Gang really hated old Gus' family to the core. He was considering whether he should chase this useless family out of Gu Village. However, he had lost his patience with Ah Shu. This time, when he heard that Ah Shu was coming, he was also disinterested. It was only when Ah Shu's cousin came over and said that Ah Shu wanted to see the homestead that he suddenly came back to his senses. Had this guy made up his mind? Gu Gang immediately tidied himself up and left. Ah Shu was standing not far from his distant cousin's house. He pointed at a place and said that he wanted to buy 1 acre. Gu Gang still stated the previous price, and there was no room for negotiation. Although Ah Shu was unhappy, he still agreed. Unexpectedly, Gu Gang pushed his luck and asked for 5 taels of silver as he had to bribe the officials. When Ah Shu heard this, he exploded and started arguing with him on the spot. He said that Gu Gang was a blood-sucking bug, that he was black-hearted, and his words were very intense. It provoked Gu Gang so much that he almost fainted. He pointed at Ah Shu and told him to get lost. He didn't have to come again. Then he went home angrily. There was no one at home. Gu Gang was so angry that his throat was smoking. He wanted to go to the kitchen to drink water. Unexpectedly, he heard strange rustling sounds. Among them was his concubine Madame Shen's. There was something wrong with that sound. Gu Gang followed the sound and saw that the door to his room was ajar. He could hear laughter coming from inside. He only heard a few words before his anger surged. He suddenly pushed open the door. What greeted his eyes were 2 people in disheveled clothes hugging each other. One of them was Gu Wanbao, his good grandson. The other was Madame Shen, his beloved concubine. What a match made in heaven. Gu Gang pointed at them with a trembling finger. You adulterous couple, you actually did such a thing, you did such a thing. Slowly, even his body began to tremble. He turned around to look for something, as if he wanted to beat them to death. Seeing that there was a wooden stick beside the door frame, Gu Gang took it. Madame Shen screamed in fear and hurriedly hid behind Gu Wanbao. She said pitifully and dependently, "What should I do? Wanbao, save me. Hell, kill me. What should I do? I'm so scared." Initially, Gu Wanbao was still a little timid. However, he had been quarreling with Gu Gang recently, so his courage slowly grew. Coupled with Madame Shen's stimulation, he immediately puffed out his chest and stood in front of her. "Who are you calling an adulterous couple? You're clearly the one who's so old and still doesn't know shame. I was the one who saved her in the first place, and I was the one who wanted to marry her. If you hadn't ruined her, we would have been a perfect couple. You old man, you already have my grandmother, yet you still fancy a young lady. She's young enough to be your granddaughter. Chapter 342. Escaped. Gu Yundong raised his hand that was holding the wooden stick high, but he could not smash it no matter what. He felt that his hand was out of control, and a bad feeling welled up in his heart. Gradually, his pupils enlarged, and Gu Yundong made a difficult hee-hee sound. He walked towards Gu Wanbao step by step, his eyes bloodshot as if he wanted to say something. However, in Gu Wanbao's eyes, it was obvious that he wanted to kill him. However, Shen saw that something was wrong before him. She tugged at Gu Wanbao's sleeve. Is he going to beat us to death? Let's run. Gu Wanbao pulled him away. Gu Yundong was a little anxious. He moved his other hand and seemed to be able to control it. He immediately grabbed Gu Wanbao, who was walking past him. Gu Wanbao's expression changed. In his panic, he grabbed the scissors in the embroidered basket and stabbed them at him. Bright red blood spurted out, dyeing Gu Wanbao's hands and his clothes red. Gu Yundong lowered his head in disbelief and looked at the scissors stuck in his chest. Gu Wanbao was also shocked. He lowered his head and looked at his hands. He had killed someone. He killed his own grandfather. Gu Wanbao suddenly took 2 steps back. He looked at Madame Shen, who also looked at him with wide eyes. You have to pay with your life for killing someone, she said with difficulty. Gu Wanbao's face turned pale. He shook his head. No, I didn't do it on purpose. I don't want to pay with my life. I don't want to die. I don't want. He turned around and ran out in a panic. Madame Shen was still standing on the spot. She looked at Gu Yundong, who was panting heavily on the ground, and suddenly laughed. Mao's head appeared at the door and waved at her. Let's go. Madame Shen cleaned up the traces on the bed and followed Mao over the wall, temporarily leaving the Gu residence. At this moment, Gu Wanbao did not expect to bump into Shu and his cousin the moment he ran out of the door. Shu saw the blood on Gu Wanbao's hand at a glance, and so did his cousin. They both looked at him in shock. Gu Wanbao shook his head violently. I didn't. As he spoke, he ran away quickly and disappeared in an instant. Before Shu could say anything, his cousin shouted, Oh no, something must have happened. She ran into the house first and searched around. In the end, she found the person lying on the ground in Gu Yundong's main room, covered in blood. Screams instantly resounded throughout the entire Gu family. Not long after, people arrived one after another. Madame Shen also came in with a basket. When she saw that her house was surrounded by people, she asked in surprise, What's wrong? Why are they all gathered at our door? When someone saw her coming over, he immediately said, Oh, you're back. Something happened at your house. Chapter 343. A stroke. Then go and find him. Madame Yu suddenly came back to her senses. Yes, you'll go look for my Wanbao. I'll get him back. After she ran out, Madame Shen took a few steps forward and asked the doctor, How's our master? Fortunately, his vitals weren't stabbed. He just lost a lot of blood. However, he suffered a huge shock and fell ill. He had a stroke. He has to be taken good care of in the future. The doctor shook his head and sighed. A stroke? Everyone was stunned. Madame Wang stopped crying. She lowered her head and looked at Gu Yundong, who could not even speak. She was a little stunned. How could this be? How could he have a stroke? What would they do in the future? When the villagers heard this news, they were inexplicably happy. Although Gu Yundong was the chief of Gu village, while most chiefs were doing it for the benefit of the family, only Gu Yundong was focused on his family's money and even sucked blood from his clansmen, which had long caused everyone to be dissatisfied. Unfortunately, the position of the patriarch was not so easy to shake. At that time, most of the elders were on Gu Yundong's side. After all, there were benefits to be gained. Fortunately, when they fled, A few elders did not survive. Gu Gang's influence weakened immediately, and after he returned, he gradually lost his power in Gu village. Therefore, even Gu Gang's appearance did not work when old Gu's family was in trouble. Now that he was paralyzed, it was simply a joyous occasion. The news spread quickly. Not long after, many people came to their house one after another. Among them was a middle-aged man who had gradually gained prestige in the village. This person was ambitious. He was from the neighboring village. When they escaped from the famine, most of the people in his village were mobilized together. This person was the leader. After returning, the two villages merged. He knew that the chief of Gu village was not a good person and had always wanted to pull him down. The villagers from his previous village all supported him. As for the people of Gu village, they were like a pot of loose sand now, without any cohesion. With the excuse that Gu Gang was not qualified to be the chief of Gu village, he told the town about the matter and then reported it to the county. After that, the head of Gu village changed hands. In just one day, so fast that Gu Gang's family did not even have time to react, their family had gone from the high and mighty village chief's family to one that no one liked. When the new village chief heard about Gu Gang's case, he reported the suspect, Gu Wanbao, to the police. The police was also searching for Gu Wanbao. Madame Yu went out to look for her son for a day, but she couldn't find him. When she returned, she realized that the sky had changed. The entire Gu family was filled with a gloomy atmosphere. Only Shen slept soundly. Gu Yundong was quite satisfied with this result. As long as Shen felt that it was fine, she would naturally be fine. About 10 days had passed since the start of her plans for Gu village. The Gu family was finished, and so was Gu Gang. Gu Yundong thought that it was time to go back and meet her younger siblings. She was already starting to miss them. Her mother was playing with the puzzle over and over again, almost to the point of erasing the patterns on the puzzle. However, before leaving she still asked Bian Yuanji, "We will be leaving here in 2 days. Is there anywhere you want to go?" She thought that after leaving this time, they might not have a chance to come back again. She asked him if there was anywhere he wanted to go and would bring him there before they left. Bian Yuanji was stunned. He lowered his head and replied after a while, "Yes." Chapter 344. Meeting Madame Hu again. Bian Yuanji wanted to take a look at his home. Ever since he came back from the desert, he stayed in the Ding family for a few days before being sent to the Gu family. Until now, he had never returned to the warm home where his parents and sister used to live. Gu Yundong immediately agreed. She also wanted to take a look. The Bian family was a little far away. After leaving the county city, they had to pass by Gu village and the Ding family's Shangbei village. After passing another village, they arrived at his house. Her eldest uncle Bian Han's parents had passed away a few years ago. His family had never had many children. Bian Yuanzi's only close relative was Bian Han's sister, who had long been married off. Unfortunately, he did not return after escaping. Guaxia village was not big and was poorer than Gu village and Shangbei village. After the disaster, it was even poorer and there were not many people left in the village. When they saw Gu Yundong and the rest, they looked over curiously. It was only when they saw them going to the Bian family that they suddenly remembered. Wasn't he the child from the Bian family? The Bian family had long been in shambles. When they left previously, they had taken everything they could. Those that could not be taken away had probably been plundered long ago. However, looking at the familiar room and environment, Bian Yuanji was still very happy. After the joy, her heart ached. Her sister was gone and she would never come back. She did not know where her parents were or if they were still alive. Gu Yundong looked around and realized that there were some wood carvings in the corner. These were all made by her uncle. Eldest uncle used to be a carpenter. Unfortunately, he had only learned it for a short period of time, so he could only make some trinkets for a living. Gu Yundong took a piece of cloth from the carriage and laid it on the ground. She placed the small wooden carvings on it. Seeing this, Bian Yuanji also ran over to help. Now that he could eat and wear warm clothes, he felt much stronger. After packing the small wooden carvings, he carried them on his back. Unexpectedly, as soon as he stepped out of the door, he saw a few people surrounding him. A young-looking woman asked him, "Yuji, is it you?" Bien Yuanji still remembered this person. She was the aunt next door. He immediately put down his things. "Aunt Li, it's me. I heard that you went to your grandpa's house. Why you back?" The two villages were far apart, so Auntie Li really didn't know what kind of life he was living. Although she knew that his family and his grandfather's family did not have a good relationship, she did not expect it to be so bad. Bien Yuanji looked at Gu Yundong, then turned around and said, "I'm not at my grandpa's house anymore. I'm out. Auntie Li, I'm leaving. I might not come back in the future." Aunt Li was stunned. She looked at him, then at Gu Yundong and MDM Yang. She did not ask further. She just sighed and said, "No matter what, it's good to be alive. It's not easy to have a full meal these days. You're a good child. Take good care of yourself." Based on Bien Yuanzi's current attire, he seemed to be doing well. He should be living a good life. Bien Yuanji nodded at Aunt Li with a smile. He now had a cousin and his aunt, Shu and Kiki. He was very good. Picking up the cloth bag on the ground, Bien Yuanji walked towards the carriage. Unexpectedly, halfway there, he suddenly saw someone walking over. As soon as Bien Yuanji saw that person, he recalled a bad memory. He turned around and ran towards Gu Yundong, holding her hand nervously. Only then did Gu Yundong look up at Madame who was walking over. Madame who was also surprised. She looked at Bien Yuanji and was speechless for a long time. Chapter 345. A little familiar upped by BOXN0. Semicron Madame who called out to him tentatively, "Nini?" She couldn't be blamed for not being sure. It was mainly because Bien Yuanji was too different from what she had seen before. Who would have thought that in just 10 days, this person would become a completely different person? It seemed that he had indeed lived a good life. Madame who felt a little jealous. When Ding Jincheng came back that day, she panicked when she didn't see Bien Yuanji. She thought that Ding Jincheng had really sold him after getting him back from old Gus family. Wasn't he just out of the tiger's den and into the wolf's den? Wouldn't Bien Mulan look for him in the middle of the night? At that time, Madame who cried and asked Ding Jincheng to bring him back. Unexpectedly, Ding Jincheng said, "Didn't you dislike him? Then wouldn't it be good if I sent him to a family who wanted to adopt him?" Madame who almost went crazy with anger. "I don't like him, but what can I do? What if his sister comes to me in the middle of the night to take my life? Mother, Mulan just doesn't want Yuanji to suffer. Think about it, did she only ask you to let us take him away from the old Gu family?" Madame who actually didn't dare to recall the situation at that time. It was Father Ding who nodded and confirmed that Bien Mulan had indeed said that. However, Madame who was still afraid. Ding Jincheng advised her, "That family is quite good and well off. Yuanji doesn't have to worry about food and clothing. It's much better than in our family. If Mulan finds out, not only will she not blame us, she will even thank us." Madame who was skeptical. Although it made sense, she still didn't dare to sleep that night. She waited all night with dark circles under her eyes and heaved a sigh of relief when she didn't see Bien Mulan and the black and white ghosts again. She fell onto the bed and slept for an entire day and night. When she woke up the next day, she heard that something had happened to old Gus family and that it was haunted. Jia Meizi had also been hit on the head and fell into the water, just like Madame Yang back then. At that time, she felt that Bien Mulan was taking revenge on old Gus family and was secretly happy. She secretly thought that the woman deserved it and started to laugh at her. However, something had been happening to old Gus family. In just 10 days, they had actually reached the point of killing each other and breaking their limbs. Madame who was a little afraid. She felt that Mulan seemed to be a little ruthless and especially vengeful. She was afraid that after Mulan finished dealing with old Gus family, she would remember what Madame who had done wrong and look for her again. Therefore, Madame who set up a memorial tablet for Bien Mulan at home and burned a lot of paper money. Chapter 346. That's Gu Dajiang's wife upped by Boxn0. Omicron Madame who watched as the three of them got into the carriage, but her brows furrowed slightly. It was only when their carriage disappeared into the distance that she came back to her senses. She strode towards Auntie Lee's house and asked her, "Hey, do you know who the person with UNG is?" Auntie Lee shook her head. "How would I know?" She didn't really want to bother with Madame Hu. Besides, she really didn't know. She had only said a few words to UNG. That girl looked very noble. How could a poor family like hers dare to look at the girl? Seeing that she could not find out anything, Madame Hu was a little angry. At this moment, she could not be bothered to go to the Bien house. She turned around and ran home. When she saw Ding Juncheng chopping firewood, she hurriedly pulled him over and asked him very seriously, "Tell me honestly, who exactly is the person who adopted Bien Yung?" Ding Juncheng was taken aback, and his gaze drifted a little. "Didn't I say it already? It's just a kind-hearted family who pitted Junji. Don't lie to me." Madame Hu suddenly shook off his hand and said angrily, "I met them all today. Not only did I meet Bien Yung, but I also met Gu Dajiang's wife." Yes, the woman who spoke like a child was Gu Dajiang's wife. Of course, she recognized Madame Yang. It was just that the Madame Yang she saw today was too different from before. Not only had she gained weight, but her face had also become better and her clothes were neat. She didn't dare to look at her anymore. It was only when she heard Madame Yang's words that she suddenly connected the two of them. However, Madame Hu could not believe it no matter what. Still, along the way she was certain that it was Madame Yang. Who was the woman holding Bien Yuanzi's hand? Ding Juncheng saw that his mother had seen them, so he did not hide it anymore. He pursed his lips and said, "That person is Yuanzi's cousin." "Cousin? She's eldest Uncle Gu Dajiang's daughter." Pissed, Madame Hu's eyes widened. Gu Dajiang's daughter? Madame Yang's daughter? No wonder Madame Yang was also there. She frowned tightly. Gu Dajiang's daughter was back, and she looked rich. She returned to Jiangyu County, but she didn't show up. She didn't go back to Gu Village, but only asked you to bring Bien Yung out? Ding Juncheng nodded. Yes, she knew that Bien Yung wasn't doing well. The Gu family didn't like him, so she took him away. She doesn't live in Jiangyu County? Ding Juncheng still nodded. Madame Hu lowered her head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, she clapped her hands and smiled. Then she turned around and left. A bad premonition flashed across Ding Juncheng's mind. He suddenly pulled her back. "Mother, where are you going?" "Where am I going? Haha, I'll go to old Gus' house." Madame Hu gloated. "They extorted a tael of silver from me and tortured me. Do you see that? Old Gus' eldest granddaughter is so promising now. She clearly came back, but she doesn't even enter the house. Haha, isn't that hilarious?" "Mother, hey, don't stop me. If old Gu finds out, he'll definitely regret it and die. I have to tell them that their rich granddaughter came back and took Bien Yung away without even looking at them. Ha, I want to laugh when I think of old Gus' face when he hears that." Madame Hu was extremely excited. She just wanted to see the world in chaos. She struggled free from Ding Juncheng and wanted to leave. Chapter 347. I'm not scaring you. Ted by Boxn0. Xiaomicronim, however, when Ding Juncheng heard her words, he broke out in cold sweat. He hugged her and dragged her back. Mother, don't go." Not only did he drag Madame Hu back to the house, but he also locked the door. Madame Hu was furious and pinched his hand desperately. "Why are you stopping me?" "Mother." Ding Juncheng pressed her down on the chair and said with a serious expression, "If you want me to lose my limbs, go ahead." Madame Hu, who was about to hit him, paused and looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Mother, have you forgotten what happened to old Gus' family recently?" Ding Juncheng took a deep breath and lowered his voice. "I suspect that the eldest daughter of the Gu family is behind old Gus' family's matters." "Huh." Madame Hu's eyes widened, as if she didn't believe it. How is it possible for a girl who didn't even dare to speak loudly in the past to do that? "I'm not scaring you," Ding Juncheng said. In the past, she didn't dare to speak loudly, but now she does. Don't forget that at Xingxing restaurant that day, other than her, there was a man who looked powerful and influential. Now that the eldest daughter of the Gu family has a backer, she's more confident. The last time she saw me, her gaze was so terrifying that I was afraid of her. Madam who was stunned. There did seem to be a man. She thought of the Gu Yundong she had seen today. Her gaze was indeed a little scary. She slowly calmed down, but she still couldn't believe it. But didn't the second and third branches of old Gus family fight between themselves? That's why I find it scary. Ding Juncheng did not expect them to be involved, but the last time he passed by Gu village and saw Go, he found it strange. Bian Yuanji had already been sent back, so why would this person who had been with Gu Yundong appear? When he heard that something had happened to old Gus family and that it was very tragic, he could not help but shiver. He did not even dare to go to the county city during this period of time. Mother, think about it. Why didn't anything happen to old Gus family earlier or later? Why did something happen as soon as Yunji left? Why did Gu Yundong stay in Jiangyu County even though she had already rescued Bian Yuanji? Why did old Gus family get into trouble, and even Patriarch Gu became like that? These people all have a grudge against Gu Dajiang. As Ding Juncheng spoke, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. I suspect that the Gu girl came back this time to take revenge. Gu Dajiang must have died. Perhaps his death is related to old Gus family, so when she becomes capable, she comes to find trouble with old Gus family. The man she followed is obviously powerful. Mother, let's not get involved with them. Otherwise, we won't have a good life either. He had been thinking a lot these past few days. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. He even suspected that his parents' encounter with a ghost had something to do with her. Madam who was stunned when she heard this. However, when Ding Juncheng said that, his tone was scary, making one's hair stand on end. She glared at him. Then I won't go? Don't go. Madam who wanted to laugh at old Gus family, but when she thought of the miserable state of old Gus family, she decided to forget it. What if this woman realized that they were bad to Bian Mulan and Bian Yunji? Gu Yundong did not know that Madam who had almost gone to Gu village to announce her return, but it did not matter even if she did. The Gu family was already in such a state. So what if they knew that she was the one who did it? Chapter 348, Preparing to Bid Farewell You. TED by BX and Zervil. Simicron. Now that the matters here were almost resolved, since his father was not here, Gu Yundong was prepared to go back. She gave the owner of Xingxing restaurant more than 10 caddies of white sugar and asked him to pay more attention to Gu village. If Gu Dajiang or his aunt and uncle returned, he would tell them that she was safe and that she and the family were at the Xuanhe prefecture. Gu Yundong had left him the address of Aunt Kes' house in the prefectural city of the Xuanhe prefecture. This was to prevent old Gus family from running to Yongfu village to cause trouble when they heard the news. Secondly, there were many people going to the prefecture capital, so it would be easier to find Aunt Kes' house. Originally, she had wanted to leave Niet Song's address. After all, Aunt Ku was now staying in Yongfu village. If she liked that place, Gu Yundong also wanted her to continue staying there. Otherwise, it would be too difficult for her to live alone. However, Niet Song's family was wealthy. If her father and the rest went over, they might not be able to see Nye Kong. It was better to leave Aunt Kes' address. When the time came, she would have to trouble the neighbors to keep an eye out. The owner of Xingxing restaurant liked white sugar very much and had a good relationship with Gu Dajiang. He agreed without hesitation. When everything was settled, Gu Yundong began to pack her luggage and clothes. She had not stayed here for long, so she did not have many things. However, he bought a lot of trinkets for Madame Yang and Bian Yuanji as a memento. Just as she was packing her luggage, there was a knock on the door. Mao's voice came from outside the door. "My lady, Miss Shen is here." Gu Yundong was stunned. She opened the door and saw MDM Shen standing outside. She was dressed in dark green clothes and looked a little haggard. When she saw Gu Yundong, her smile was very gentle. Gu Yundong glanced at the bag on her back and was a little surprised. What are you? I'm here to bid you farewell. Gu Yundong let her in and poured her a glass of water. Farewell? Where are you going? Will old Gus' family let you go? It was early in the morning and still a little cold outside. Shen took a sip of hot water and felt much warmer. She smiled. So what if they won't let me go? Gu Gang could not even speak. He stared and drooled all day. Madame Wang wanted to detain her as a slave. Now that Gu Gang was no longer supporting her, Madame Wang wanted to bully her to death, but she was no longer obedient. As for Madame Yu and her husband, they were still trying their best to find out where Gu Wanbao was. Didn't Madame Yu use such a despicable method to send her to Gu Gang's bed because she was afraid that Madame Shen would pester Gu Wanbao? Now, Madame Shen would let her have a taste of losing her son. Madame Shen was overjoyed and her smile became brighter. Back then, when Gu Gang wanted to take me in as his concubine, I lied and said that I had lost my household registration certificate. In fact, I had been hiding it all along. When Gu Gang wanted to go to the government office to get me a new one, I thought of a way to delay it until now. Although I'm his concubine on the surface, I'm still a good citizen. Even if I escape, they can't do anything to me. Although the refugees had been back to their hometown for some time, because the two villages had merged, many household registrations were still unclear, so she was not an exception. Gu Yundong admired her. Then where do you plan to go? You'll just go home. Madame Shen sighed faintly. I remember you saying that your home is in a town on the other side of Feng County, right? Feng County is not close to here. It could even be said that it was far away. After leaving Jiangyu County, they had to pass through the Yongning Prefecture. Why don't you wait for another day? We'll give you a ride. We have to pass by anyway. Chapter 349. A Favor You. Ted by BX and Zervil. Omicron was stunned for a moment before she lowered her eyes and thought about it. To be honest, she was indeed a little worried about traveling alone. Originally, she had planned to look for a caravan after bidding farewell to Gu Yundong and see if she could hitch a ride. It would be great if she could be with Gu Yundong. Hence, she nodded and agreed. Thank you. Then I'll take you to your room to rest. We'll leave early tomorrow morning. Yeah. Gu Yundong brought her to the room next door. That room was empty and just needed to be tidied up. When Madame Shen was working, Gu Yundong went out. Unexpectedly, as soon as she walked out of the courtyard, she saw Mao and the other three pushing each other towards her. Gu Yundong stopped in her tracks and glanced at them. The four of them immediately straightened their backs. However, their eyes did not stop rolling for a moment. Anyone could tell that they wanted to say something but hesitated. Gu Yundong entered the central room and said, "Do you have anything to say to me?" The four of them quickly walked in and looked at each other. After a while, Mao, who was the boss, said, Miss, we want to beg me for something." Beg me for something? Gu Yundong was surprised. Why did it sound so serious? She couldn't help but sit up straight. Go ahead. Well, miss, can you bring us back to the Xuanhe prefecture? Gu Yundong could not help but be stunned. She blurted out, Brother Xiao didn't say that he wanted to take you away? Brother Xiao? Xiao Qingyuan, who had just stepped through the door, suddenly stopped in his tracks. This was the first time he had heard her call him Brother Xiao. Why did it sound so nice? Xiao Qingyuan couldn't help but smile. He tried his best not to laugh out loud. He cleared his throat and strode into the central room. Gu Yundong turned her head and saw him. She looked at the spring breeze on his face in confusion. What happened? Why was he so happy? Xiao Qingyun silently walked to a chair at the side and sat down. He picked up his teacup and drank his tea quietly. Continue chatting. He pretended that he didn't exist. She could continue to call him Brother Xiao. Gu Yundong felt that there was something strange about him. They were talking about him and he was present. How could they continue chatting? However, Mao could still continue. He said, Young Master Xiao said that it's up to you whether we stay or leave. Xiao Qingyuan nodded slightly. Gu Yundong was speechless. Didn't you bring them from the prefectural city? He had already ordered them around for so many days. Had he not decided if he wanted to take them away? Gu Yundong could not help but rub her forehead. He pointed outside and said, "Go pack your things. Buy everything you need." "If you need money, ask Xiao Qingyuan." "All right." The four of them immediately cheered up and skipped out of the door. Xiao Qingyuan was a little disappointed. Why did she call his name again? Mao quickly poked his head in. "Young Master Xiao Qingyuan could only stand up and leave expressionlessly. Gu Yundong looked at his back and was puzzled. Why did it feel like he was a little disappointed? Could it be that he did not want to bring Mao and the other three along? No way. Didn't he say that Mao and the others were very smart? If they were nurtured well, they would be his right-hand men in the future? Moreover, they had already done bad things together. It was not good to leave them behind. Gu Yundong shook her head and returned to her room to continue packing. The next morning, the group loaded the items into 2 carriages, checked out of the inn, and set off for the city gate. The children of old Gus family's 2 branches, who had been slacking off whenever they could, had no choice but to work now. The younger ones had to go to pick pig grass and firewood. Every day, they would come back and look at their swollen fingers with teary eyes. It was only then that they realized what kind of life Gu Yundong and her siblings had led in the past. There was regret and hatred. Why didn't Gu Yundong and her siblings come back? If they were here, they would be the ones doing the work. Jiameizi was so tired that she couldn't even straighten her back every day. In the past, she was the laziest and most greedy sister-in-law, but now, she couldn't sleep or eat her fill every day. In the day, she had to wash clothes, cook, and go to the fields. In the middle of the night, she had to take care of Gu Dai. Sometimes, when Gu Da's temper flared up, he would hit her. He blamed her for selling the 3rd branch's child and implicating him, causing him to become a cripple. Jiameizi didn't dare to retort. She had gone back to her maternal family, but what did they say? "Maisie, your reputation is ruined now. Everyone in our village knows that you wanted to harm your sister-in-law and even cut off your 3rd uncle's leg. Now, it has already implicated your niece's marriage. If you're divorced, our Jia family will treat it as if we don't have a daughter like you." Now, that Bian Yuanji is going to enjoy life too. Someone at the side did not believe it. That eldest granddaughter of old Gus family was very timid in the past. Why do you make it sound like they're 2 completely different people? Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? How could I be wrong? Madam Hu retorted excitedly. I even saw her bring Bian Yuanji to the Bian family that day and take away a lot of the things in the Bian family. She's changed. She married a rich man. Her clothes are flamboyant and she's wearing gold chains. There's a silver hairpin on her head, a jade bracelet on her wrist, and she's sitting in a carriage with 4 or 5 maidservants. Ha! Everyone was in an uproar. So rich? Madam Hu snorted. And Gu Dajiang's wife. Tske, there's a maidservant supporting her when she gets into the carriage. She's even fed. What does it matter if she's a fool? Anyway, there's someone to serve her, right? You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.